I'd like to call the meeting to order. That's all I said so far.
I knew that probably wasn't said, but I couldn't hear.
Okay. So looking for a motion.
To adopt the agenda, so moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the agenda? I have one request to change the order of the presentations to the board so that the VUHS presentation is first. Is that okay? I was going to say, is that okay with our other presenters? It's about 10 minutes, yes?
10 minutes.
Okay. All right. So we will make that A and then move the audit to B and the Career Center to C. Anything else?
We're going to have a chance for public communication.
It is next on the agenda, yes. All right, so all in favor of accepting the agenda with that change, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to public communication. We do have, okay, I know you want to talk. Before we start with public communication, there is a sign-in sheet in the back, so please make sure that you have signed in so that we can have your name on the record for the minutes, please. We would like to ask that people come up to the microphone at the end of the table here for public comment so that it can be recorded for the RETN recording. And please introduce yourself, state your name and the town where you live, or if you're an employee. So, Sharon? She has a handout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me sit down.
And just so you know, the mic doesn't actually mic you in this room, but it's for the recording.
Okay. I'm Sharon Cram, and I teach first grade at Addison Central School. And we've had a couple meetings with Joanne and Travis, and we have some concerns. So some of the faculty feel that the further reductions of teaching staff will have a direct effect on the meeting the students' personal educational needs for each grade level next year. Over the last 5 years, the Addison faculty has been reduced from 7 to 5 teachers. Our math interventionist position was reduced from full-time to 3 days a week several years ago. We have eliminated single classroom teachers for grades 2nd and 5th, which has resulted in a variety of multi-age classes. Now the district is reducing the Addison teachers to 4 teachers for 7 grades. What happened to our goal of making sure there was equity among all schools in the district? You may not be aware of the following facts. We are increasing in student population and student education needs, special education needs. This year, it's been increasingly difficult to meet the needs of all our students. Due to the increase of IEP students who have experienced trauma, if one of our teachers is sent to Virgins next year, we will have no choice but to combine all the grades into multi-grade classrooms except for kindergarten. The following class sizes at Addison Central School are Addison Northwest enrollment projections. So for 2018-2019, which would be next year, there's going to be 13 kindergarten students, a 1-2 multi-grade with 22 students, 3-4 multi-grade with 17 students, 5-6 multi-grade with 19 students. And the following year, we have for kindergarten 10 students, a 1-2 multi-grade with 24 students, 3-4 multi-grade with 19 students, and 5-6 multi-grade with 18 students. The first and second combined grade Addison will be the largest class for the next 2 years in the K-2 cluster in the Addison Northwest School District. So if you look at the graph or the little table we made, it compares us to the other 2 schools. So in ACS, we'll have 23 students in first and second grade combined. We'll have 19 first graders in Ferrisburg. And at Virgin's Union Elementary School, 2 classes of 15 and 16 for first. And then on the other side is what would be in the second grade in the 2 schools. And then you see the projected enrollment for 2019-2020. There's 24 students in first and second grade combined, 12 at Ferrisburg, 19 in second. VUES has 2 classes of 16 and 2 classes of 14 and 15 in second. So we've been told at ACS that we currently have the highest percentage of IEP students for our school population compared to other schools in our district. There are a total of 28 IP and EST students for the next school year who will need a great deal of support to meet the standards in many subject areas, as well as address some really serious behavior concerns. This figure does not include any within the incoming kindergarten class of 13 and the 13 additional students being considered for EST plans. Every year for the last 5 years, we've had new students added to our roster. This year, we had an influx of 10 new students across different grades. The above student count for next year's classes does not take into account that every year we gain new students, and many of these new students need IEP or intensive math and reading intervention when they arrive at our school. Before making teacher reductions, we need to consider the number of students that might prefer to transfer to Addison Central School from other schools now that school choice is available. This would increase our class size. Next year, we have a large multi-age classes, and I've already been told by one administrator that certain classes will now be too large and will prevent students from other schools to come to Addison. Our current second grade and third grade has particularly high number of students on or being evaluated for individual educational plans, and this will result in the third of the class on IEPs next year. The range of reading levels in this class is enormous, ranging from first grade level through 8th grade level. These students will be in a proposed 3rd and 4th multi-grade class next year. To meet the diverse needs of that school student population, that particular class should be separated into 2 different classes, and that can only be accomplished if we have 5 teachers. As a faculty, district, and school board, we need to answer the following questions before reductions are considered in teachers per grade in all schools. What is the ANWSD district policy for maximum number of students in a class? How many students are the maximum allowed in a multi-age class? And just to let you know, other districts that I've looked at across the district have been addressing how many students should be in a multi-age class. The State Board of Education maximum average per grade cluster, K through 2, is 20 students. But, you know, that doesn't take into account multi-age students. What will be the maximum number of students in a multi-grade classroom before students are placed back into a single grade and a teacher is moved back to Addison Central? What is the maximum student load occupancy for a classroom? When stating the ratio numbers of teachers per students, we were informed that every full-time teacher is included in that count. Art, physical ed, music, speech, language, among others. These include instructors who do not have a direct influence on whether a teacher can read on level or meet the standards of writing, math, science, and social studies. How many staff are considered part of that student-staff ratio? How will we meet the academic needs of large classes of students in a multi-age classroom next year? We will not be able to cover the curriculum recommended by our district when it requires that Bridges math instruction is 90 minutes a day per grade with only 3 teachers for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th grade. How will we teach the 180 minutes of daily required math for 2 grades in a multi-age classroom where the math interventionist only teaches 3 days a week? How will we cover the foundation spelling program, which requires 30 minutes for each grade daily in a multi-age classroom? Who will be teaching 60 minutes of spelling for 2 grades daily in one class? And how will we teach guided reading in a multi-age classroom that has an enormous range of reading levels? This will have a direct impact on how many minutes of direct reading instruction groups of students have with a teacher every day. The ACS faculty suggests the following solutions. The best solution is to keep the current 5 teaching positions for 7 grades, so students can meet the standard at each grade level for all subjects. Then we can personalize learning, which we've always practiced at ACS, but is now required at the district level. The grade configurations we have currently with 5 teachers for 7 grades gives us a flexibility to split students that have behavior issues, divide siblings so they're in different classes. It is crucial for optimal student learning that we divide the current 2nd and 3rd grade class, which will not be accomplished if a teacher leaves ACS. We should divide the multi-age 1-2 class if it reaches over 20, because our district class size policy is 18 in a class for a single grade K through 2. These class configurations at the bottom would solve the above issues next year by separating siblings, decreasing the number of IEP and EST students that need extra help in a single classroom. It would give us the flexibility for increases in class size when new students move into Addison or if new students are admitted from another school in our district. The class sizes we propose will also decrease the range of reading levels in a class and give us enough teachers to cover the Bridges math curriculum in each grade. These classes would be more in line with the classes at the other schools at ANWSD. So we're proposing that kindergarten stays single with 13 students. We split the 2nd grade, which we've always been doing, which we will not be able to do anymore, into 1st, 2nd with 15 students, 2-3 with 12 students, 4-5 with 11 students, and 5-6 with 15 students. Increase the math interventionist position to full-time or provide another 2 days a week math interventionists to teach the 3 grades that each need 90 minutes required of daily Bridges math instruction. Rewrite the class size policy for ANWSD to include minimal, optimal, and maximum classes for multi-age. Decide on a policy for dividing multi-age grades if they become too large for students to receive an appropriate education. In addition, add the maximum class size for each grade cluster to the class size policy chart as required by the state of Vermont. So right now we just have minimum class size and optimal class size, and most districts also have a maximum class size on their class size policy. Retain our school secretary and principal positions at 100%. Our students and faculty need the support of these full-time positions. Even though we are a small school, all the same tasks have to be accomplished that a larger school requires. Decisions are being made by the Addison Northwest administration that are based on increasing student-teacher ratio and class size instead of considering what students need to be academically successful. When our district was consolidated, it was to focus on more equity for all students in the Addison Northwest School District. The current proposed cuts do not provide the Addison students equity. Please consider how these current reductions will impact our students and community. The Addison Central School faculty.
Conversations about this, and you've made some suggestions about some policies that you'd like us to revisit. I know that at our next meeting on March 12th, which I think is at the elementary school actually, that we will be having a discussion around staffing for next year. We have not, as a board, had any discussion around that. It's actually the domain of the administration to do the staffing. We have approved the budget. We have not determined any staffing decisions.
Can I ask a question? Very quick question.
Okay.
Of Sharon. Can you just tell me what the
Diana, I'm sorry, can I just finish my sentence, actually?
Pardon?
Can I just finish my sentence
Oh,
though
I'm
first?
sorry. I thought
Thank
you
you.
were done.
And later in March, we're going to be holding a retreat with the board retreat with the topic of how to deal with declining student enrollment as we move forward. So just so that you're aware that we are looking into some things, but I certainly hear what you're saying, and I know how difficult these classes can be with the behaviors and the needs. But you know, you did refer to equity a couple times, and I think that we are trying to look at equity. I know that we've looked at equity amongst the Unified Arts programs and the sports and the technology, so we are trying to look at that. But I have written down a lot of the suggestions that you've made, and we will talk about them. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I just am curious to know, in your 1-2 multi-age on the first page for 18-19, what's that breakdown of first grade and second grade students?
11 and 11.
Please go ahead. Can you come up to?
We'll make this brief. My name's Caitlin Harwood. I'm a Addison Central parent and the chair of the PTA, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to kind of share a little bit of the concerns of the Addison parents, which are admittedly coming from a place of, in the last week, there's been a lot of communication through the grapevine and email circulating about staff reduction at Addison Central, and I think part of the reason we feel that so acutely, not saying that other schools don't, but is because of our size, and it's kind of hard to imagine how we will operate with less staff. I know that, you know, the discussion has been that the principal position would be decreased, the secretary position would be decreased, and naturally folks already obtaining those positions may consider looking for employment elsewhere, which is concerning. And then absolutely with, you know, with the possibility of losing another teacher. And I just so happen to be one of the parents who will be directly affected by that. We all will, but I have 2 kids who are 1 year apart, and one of them is on an IEP and is a special needs kid. And I think that I would have to really think very carefully about what my plan would be for them next year if this change happens, because I don't think the 2 of them being in the same classroom would be a positive thing for either of them, and would probably impede their ability to access their education quite readily. And it makes sense to me, and I also understand on a visceral level that you folks are under a lot of pressure to make budget cuts. You know, it's not that everyone's doing this for fun. You know, things need to get cut somewhere. But I think in general, parents are feeling like we're uninformed and we have lots of questions. And so understanding that you can't all answer those questions tonight, you know, Lori has been really thoughtful and has offered to come to our PTA meeting this week and kind of open up a forum for parents to ask questions, which I think is really helpful. And maybe moving forward, could it be discussed, you know, what are opportunities to allow parents to ask their questions and voice their concerns, because we don't really feel like we have a proper forum to do that, where we're not under a tight time constraint. And just a couple of the other questions that I had and some others have as well, you know, in regards to cutting, is it just staff cuts that are being looked at, or is it budget cuts across the board? And how do the potential staffing cuts at Addison compare to staffing cuts in the other schools? And is the effect on the student body and the staff going to be the same, considering our student body size? And that was the other question, the proposed staffing budget cuts. And I think you mentioned this, Sue, just now. But people are confused as to how those decisions are made. So is that something that just comes from the superintendent's office, or is that something that the board has to vote on altogether? Go ahead.
Staffing is the domain of the administration.
Okay.
So it's not just the principal. She works with other administrators to discuss and come up with a plan.
Okay.
You know, and I am writing down some of your questions. Have you gone to the principal and or the superintendent, and have you asked them these questions?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Park is very helpful, and we've been having lots of discussions, you know, and he's been very helpful in that regard. I haven't reached out directly to Joanne. I've been chatting with, you know, Christina and Lori a little bit, but to be honest, it's hard. There's so many different people involved, and there's so many different players involved, and I myself don't even feel fully informed. It's kind of hard to know where to start, and I'm kind of coming from a place of trying to help organize a large group of people. Otherwise, everyone's emails are going to be inundated with, you know, 60 different concerned parents on various levels of understanding of the situation. So my being here tonight was hopefully an attempt to kind of help organize those thoughts and concerns and just present them to you guys so that you know. And, you know, Addison, because we're small, I think we feel at a disadvantage a lot. And so when these proposals come out kind of with no warning, it can feel very traumatic, and it can feel like we're kind of like we're being pushed to the wayside. And I know that that's probably not anyone's intention, but that's very much how it feels. And so we just wanted to kind of extend that to all of you and let you know we're feeling it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
I'm
it.
sorry. I
No?
know. It
Yeah.
is very difficult.
Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks.
I am taking notes, and we will definitely have some conversation in March as well. Is there any other public comment tonight? Yep.
Hi, my name's Carol McBride. I wrote my statement before your discussion about the staffing changes, so I do refer to some staffing changes that have been rumored, and I know they're not set in stone, but, so please, you know, accept my apologies that when I refer to those.
Carol, where do you live?
So I live in Addison, and I have 3 children in the Addison Central School. I have 9-year-old twins who are in the 3rd grade, and a 7-year-old who is in the 2nd grade. And this year they are in a combined classroom. So it's been a really rough year for them. The classroom has a lot of disruptive issues, behavioral issues, as I'm sure you're all aware. And from my own family's history, my mother was a teacher, and after a similar classroom, she walked out of education. Like, she just could not go back. So every parent wants the best for their kids. We know that. That's why we're all here today. And this has been a really hard year for my family. My baby, sorry, it's been a really hard year. I've watched my youngest really struggle in this combined classroom. She's lost her confidence completely. And my oldest has come home in tears because she feels bad for her teacher. The thought of having my children simply moved along and remaining in this atmosphere absolutely breaks my heart, because they'll be encountering the exact same issues next year. And a classroom with too many students, all of the same behavioral issues. It's too much for the teachers, and it's too much for the kids. They're not getting the opportunities to learn that they deserve. It's really upsetting as a parent from my personal perspective. I want my children to grow up loving to learn. I want them to love to go to school. They should, and this is the opportunity when they're really young to give them that love of learning. And I feel like right now, maybe we're failing them, at least in some part, at least in this one classroom, and potentially in the future, because if we do maintain these classrooms where we're not supporting them as needed, both the teachers and the students, then we're losing out on an opportunity to create educated citizens of the world, because they're not going to pursue education. They're not going to want to go to school and to follow up on their dreams. So as it stands, my youngest is struggling in part because she's constantly comparing herself to her sister. And her sister is someone who excels in everything she does. She's almost 2 years older. It's a 22-month gap between them, yet you have a child who is so much younger trying to strive to be as capable as her older sister. And her older sister is struggling because all of the other kids are constantly going up to her and saying, "Why is your sister doing this?" and tattling to her. And she feels like she has to mother her sister within the classroom. So it's taking away from both of their experiences. When my twins were separated in preschool, it was the greatest educational gift we could give them. They both blossomed. They had been a pair and one spoke for the other prior to that, but separating them, they became their own individuals, and I feel like my 7-year-old has not had that opportunity, and she is really struggling because of that. So here's where I refer to the staffing changes. So finding out that the school board was reassigning a teacher and making other significant budget cuts which undermine administrative support gives a strong indication of how the board feels about our small school. As parents, that's how we feel, or I at least. Many of us love the sense of community that comes with us having such a small school. We get together, everyone knows everyone is a little bit in everyone's business. It's a great joy to have such a small environment. But instead of addressing these issues, the school board is instead ensuring the students will think that the experience they're experiencing on a daily basis is a normal school environment. And how can love of learning be fostered when the children don't have what should be a normal day? I think that most of us are aware that Addison Central School's days are probably numbered. We understand that declining student enrollment is probably going to wipe out our school at some point. But what we want is transparency. We want to know what the timeline is. We want to know general transparency. What is going on? What's envisioned for our school and our whole district. Addison Central parents should not have learned that a student's being reassigned through rumors and emails. That information should be disseminated early, and that should be disseminated by the school board. And this decision hurts the students, which is exactly what any thoughtful decision should be trying to avoid. I understand we have to be considerate of the budget, but our primary objective as a community should be to focus on what is best for our children.
We're gonna maybe catch up with you later.
We're way behind schedule.
I know. Is there any other public comment tonight? All right. Thank you. We really appreciate you all coming. We appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your ideas and your stories. And we will take this all into consideration as we move forward. And I hope you can all stick around for the bond forum at 7:30. Get some information about that as well. All right, the next item on the agenda is the presentations to the board. And we're going to start off with the high school presentation.
So I'm Stephanie Taylor, principal at Virginia High School, and I'm very pleased to present the heart and soul of Virgins Union High School, the people who allow us to address student behavior management in a kinder and gentler way, and definitely a more progressive way. Lori Stedman is handing out papers right now, and I'll describe those in a little bit. This is Lee Shorey with our therapy dog, registered Commodore, and Sharon Mallory, the newest member of RRC. RRC stands for Resource Response Center, and these three ladies are going to tell you a little bit about what they do every day. I did want to mention that between the three of them, they have 73 years serving Virgins Union High School and over 90 years in education in general. So they know their business. Thank you.
Thank you. I must say that, that we work hard every day here to make this a safe and peaceful place, but we're all a little nervous tonight with all of you. Go figure, huh?
We normally deal with kids.
That's easier.
But thanks to Stephanie, this is our new new idea about how to reach out to kids, and he's doing a very good job. And he's very certified. I hope no one here minds dogs because he can go wait in the classroom.
The information in your packets is not, these are sort of resource sheets. They're examples of plans that students fill out. They'll talk a little bit about the plans that they put on. There's also an explanation of our comprehensive behavior system and the 5 guidelines of the UHS, and these are sort of guiding documentation. But they're just for your resource later.
And we also have included in that comments from teachers and students of what our RC means to them, and I hope you enjoy reading that.
And the last 2 pages are comments from a gentleman that worked in RC who has retired, and he made a lot of comments in regards to help you understand what RC is all about. So what we're going to do here, this slideshow is available if you request it from Stephanie. We also have an RC site on our website, and these are explaining the behaviors that we see regularly and respond to.
Some of, not all.
Yeah, not all.
So the question out there is, what is restorative justice? And most importantly, what does it look like in our school? And I think just a little history blip. I could go on and on, but I'm going to get kicked by my colleagues. RC is a marriage between, we had a in-school planning room, and Lori Stedman was managing that, and I was downstairs running an alternative program, and we put the 2 together, and it is Restorative Response Center, and it responds to all students age 7 through 12, all students in our school.
And I actually had to make a phone call to a parent today to explain a little goings on. And when I explained to the parent that we practice restorative justice, she actually was very relieved to hear that, because her son was not suspended. In fact, more of a proactive, what happened, why did it happen, and what can we do to change the behavior and make it better.
It's restorative justice isn't a new concept. I got interested in it back in the 80s because of what New Zealand was doing, and it had a lot to do with how you approach an issue with students, 1 or 2 together, or even student and teacher in a circle. And every day there is an example of that in the school. I encourage you to come in and be a part of that, observe it. One of the practices we do is a protocol peer review process within the morning meetings, and that's where students give each other support and feedback when a student is presenting a plan. And before we instituted this, you can see we had a high number of detentions. I won't read this all through, you have it via this PowerPoint from Stephanie. But after, what's important is that we have all of the students giving us testimony that's on our website in regards to being able to work with their peers versus just be sent to the principal. They say it's a lot more real to hear from their peers, and it also, we have seen it more effective in making change quicker, and we also are responding to the state's mandate to have a practice in place in which data can be collected, research-based approaches and interventions can be done.
The other thing we do is we use mentors. We're big into mentors, and accessing our high schoolers to mentor our middle schoolers who have been put on a plan, and the high schoolers themselves have all been on plans but have now become resources for our RC to help other students make better choices and see what can happen when they take it seriously. And most do, and it's pretty amazing to see the growth between 7th grade and 9th grade.
I think one of the most important things to point out, because it might be pretty foreign words to some of you folks. So when a student gets sent out of a class, we can just kind of play a quick scenario. So Mr. Smith calls me or Lee or Sharon and says, Johnny just chucked a pencil across the room and he's coming down your way. So we receive him in our RC, we do a talk, we talk with the teacher, and then if it's determined that Johnny is gonna go on a protocol plan, we sit with him and go through. You have some really good examples in your packet there, what actually the students type out, because they have to identify where things went wrong and what they are going to do to make it better. One of the most important pieces of restorative justice is that we don't just do a plan and call the parents and the student either gets a detention or suspension. We actually have the students sit down with the teacher where the harm was done, and they are going to, we facilitate that. They're going to work toward repairing a relationship that was harmed. Another example of that would be that if a student picked up a brick and threw it through the window of the school, typical response to that would be, the kid probably gets suspended, sent home, you're gonna have detention for 12 weeks. But what we do is we sit with that student, we talk about, hey, what is going on with you? Where did this come from? And then most often it turns out that there's lots of things that are going on for that student. We get right in there with that. What's going on? What can we do to help? And then we sit down the student with our grounds maintenance person and say, you just took out a $60 window. What are we going to do to make this right? So then a lot of different things come into play, but it's very much a reparative, restorative type practice versus old school discipline, and it's quite successful.
And the follow-up too goes on for months and months and months afterward, because I know in my office I keep a running list of all the kids that have been on plans, and weekly I go in and I check their grades. One indicator for me how kids are doing is are they keeping up with their work? And if I find that they're not, we'll get together and figure out, do we need a mentor? Where are their callbacks? What can we do to help them? And it's just an ongoing process that never really ends for kids. And I think that's one of the reasons why they become so close with us.
I'd like to point out that on Wednesday, we have another school coming to visit us. We've had probably 10 schools so far looking at being able to transfer this process at their school. Edmonds is doing it now with the 5th grade. They just started that before Christmas, and we were working along with them on that. And South Burlington. I think what you see, one of the most important things is there's more class time with this approach. And a phone call can indicate one of us go and work with the student out in the hallway and they remain in the class after that just to talk. Or I can go in, or Sharon can go in, and Lori, we can teach while this teacher goes out and talks with the student in the hallway. The main purpose is the sooner they're back learning is what we want to see happen. And the other thing is we want to see the corrective action turn into them being able to manage themselves. So it's a teaching model in that respect. And that whatever happens, particularly if it has to do with bullying or any of those harassment, that it stops. And that we continually follow up to make sure of that, and we develop a relationship with the student.
So yeah, just more things that we
Yeah.
do.
These are all different interventions, but you can see on the PowerPoint if you have any questions or any that you can get.
But one of the things I wanted to point out that you have in your packet, it's a page that looks like this, and it's called SWIS, and that is the computer database program that we use here. Actually, I think for all the schools in the district use it. So RRC is responsible for entering all this data, and where you see 2015-16 with zeros where I had to handwrite it in, that's because we did not have SWIS that year, so those numbers came off of PowerSchool. So this is a way that we're able to look at the ups and downs and, kind of chart things over the years, what's gotten better, what's gotten worse. This is a pretty busy year that we've had already because we're already up to a pretty high number and it's not quite March. So, but anyway.
The high numbers has everything to do with people feel safer and more comfortable reporting, particularly students. That's increased significantly with RRC in place and the different things that we do. And I'd like to did you want to just go to the graph? Because I think we're running out of time. One of the most important things that we make sure we do is with any intervention, particularly protocol peer review process, we do an evaluation. The student fills it out, and we have kept data on their responses. Because we need to know if they felt it was fair. We need to know if they felt that they had a better relationship with their teacher. We need to know, we asked several of these questions, and we have graphs of a lot of responses students have made over the years. This has been
180 students
Yeah.
over 5 years.
And the students in this school are so familiar with circles that we can get a call from a teacher and walk in and put a class in a circle for 5 to 10 minutes to address an issue. And what happens is they then can continue with the class, and there's a lot different feel to it.
Do you want to talk about any of this?
Just if you can, Stephanie also has this if you want it passed over to you, but for instance, we ask different questions and you can see how students will agree or disagree. When I wrote the plan, I was invested in taking responsibility to resolve the situation. We can just scroll quickly through these questions. Did the plan help? Reviewing my plan during my morning meeting helped me hold myself accountable for my actions through the 5 days. Big buzzword like restorative justice is now, but in the early days, Joanne and some of you will remember, is social skills, and I used to teach a class. What I see happening in the morning meetings is the students are giving each other feedback, accepting feedback, asking supportive questions. They learn these skills within the context of this, and that to me is so critical. I mean, through the years, I've been able to see this whole thing evolve, and it's pretty darn exciting.
Anybody have any specific questions?
Yes. Yeah. This is great. I want to say, really great.
Thanks,
I'm
Lori.
really glad
Thanks.
y'all do this. Thank you.
And
I know, it's coming, it's coming. So there's a couple of lines on here. This is the referrals by problem behavior multi-year that have tardy. And tardy has been a sort of an issue in the high school for a long time, at least in my mind. And we went from bunches to almost none. And so I'm wondering, do we even count tardy anymore? Okay,
We count it, but in a different way.
okay.
So, a few years back, where's it at right here? So we were at 821 and then, so a few years back, when I first started here in this school in 2005, on your third tardy, you were assigned a detention, and then you would serve that detention with me. And every time a detention came through, I got in and I logged it against that student. Well, it got to be where it was overwhelming, and there was so many students. I had kids lined up, sitting all along the wall, some 2 or 3 rows deep. It was pretty crazy. So there was a different approach that was taken to tardies, and it sort of lost the momentum, if you would. So it's something that we're looking at again on how we're going to handle it, because unfortunately we do have a pretty high number of tardies right now, but it's also something that we're trying to work with morning meeting teachers, the advisories, to engage the kids and get kids here. And it's just been an issue, and it's an issue at so many schools. And one of the things too, Lori, is that we don't start school with math or science. We start school with morning meeting, and we try really, really hard to get kids to conceptually accept the fact that we consider morning meeting a class. That's where you're going to build rapport with your kids. You have those kids for 4 years, but they don't get a credit for it, so they don't feel that it's, you follow me?
Worthy of them being on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We feel that it is.
Yeah.
But
we get creative with it
Interesting.
through plans. Like 3 examples that I can remember is I approached a student and I said, you know what? We don't have anybody announcing in the morning the sports update, and it frustrates me. I want to know right away in the morning if I didn't make it to a game. Well, this young man wanted to do that, go into broadcasting. He was never late. He was there putting it on the announcements like that. So we work it into a plan, and usually it's because we talk about the lack of time to build a relationship with your teacher in morning meeting. And if it's Sue O'Daniel, I was able to get a student through his protocol plan for something else to understand that so well that he went, if you add up all the time I'm tardy, that's the lack of time with Sue O'Daniel. And I said, don't you want her college recommendation 2 years down the road? And it just goes like that. And because of RC, we have time to do that with a student. So on an individual basis, you can get creative and get them saying, I can't be late for a morning meeting anymore. So because of these kind of reasons.
So it sounds like you're tracking it, it's just not being
Yeah.
tracked here. Is that-
Not the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a challenge. We'll,
So is this
we-
part of your PBIS?
Mhm.
This, or is
Mhm.
this is your
It
PBIS?
is,
It is.
yes.
It's built through years of best. I don't know how many years Lori went, and how many years I went, but it mushroomed out of that. We need to address all schools in the school and teach them about the system. We offer an impact class, an exploratory. All three of us have a piece of that. We teach all seventh graders coming through the school 5 guidelines, what this protocol peer review is all about. So they're introduced to the system in a class. And that to me has been very effective, yeah.
And I think one of the, whoops, I'm
Excuse me.
sorry.
Go ahead, Lori.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to point out, Lee touched on it briefly, but John Kidday, I don't know if any of you are familiar with him, but he came from out west and has made quite a name for himself here in Vermont. And he is in charge of the Vermont Restorative Justice, something or something.
I wrote his recommendation for the state.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, but we have all attended many of his workshops, trainings, we have his books. We've also been highly trained in the hazing, harassment, and bullying protocol that we
Through the
follow
state.
very closely. So, we're a very diverse group, but we, first and foremost, our most important thing, our mission of the day, we build rapport, we repair, and we respect, and we share that amongst our students and our teachers, and that's what we insist on in our building. And it's interesting to see the 7th graders coming in, to our school, and it's a big school, and one of the things, our common language that we often will say is, that's not how we do it in our school.
No.
This is how we do it here. And so,
And it's not just the negative. Out of RC comes Peace One Day. Out of RC comes grade level community service walkathons. Out of RC comes many things that look at students and how they can work together for a very positive cause.
And as someone who's newer to the school than these two awesome ladies, I would just say that one of the reasons why I wanted to come here, and I know Stephanie's heard this over and over and over, is because I am so proud of what we do here, and it doesn't happen in other schools. It just doesn't happen. And I think you all should be incredibly proud to have this here.
we did have Channel 3 News come down when, were you still here, Glory? No, when we first
What was her
formed
name? She's a hotshot
RRC, Gina
reporter.
Bullard. She
Yeah.
doesn't work for Channel 3
Yeah.
anymore. And I tried really hard to get the news clip, but it's gone, it's into archive and they can't find it. Anyway, it was such a new, unusual thing to have happen in a school that they sent Channel 3 News down and they interviewed us and a whole bunch of students, and even to this day, it's still a very rare thing in a public school system to have a department like what we have.
Well, thank you.
How'd Commodore do? Pretty well, huh?
He used to sleep on the floor.
He's been at work all day here.
Thank you all.
And his name is Commodore Thomas Superintendent.
Okay, so we have an audit presentation.
No.
Getting old. So my name's Bill Hall. I work with RHS Smith & Company. We've been doing the ANW, did I say that right? SU Supervisory Union for, well, it was SU when we were doing
SU
it.
that he did.
So, for the last couple of years. I just recently, on the way up here, received an email that said that you all had some questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over these questions. And then if you have any questions on any of the drafts, we can go over that. Normally what I normally do is I go over each draft. Problem is obviously with 5 drafts, it would probably take me an hour and a half or so, and I don't think we all want to sit here through that. So, but we'll go through these questions. So the first question that came to me was the financial staff cooperative and professional? My answer to that would be yes. I think I said this last year, and I'll say it again. Martha was very key on the audit. In FY16's audit, I probably had her sweating most every day, running around and getting me stuff. This year it was much easier on Martha. Also, your other staff was great. I had no issues with your staffing at all, just FYI. Question 2, what changes in accounting standards do you think will impact our school? Will any of the planned changes impact our debt covenants or other operations? Is the leadership aware of these issues and responding accordingly? So I'm not exactly sure what this question's asking. I'm not sure what accounting standards we could be talking about. I guess one I could bring up would be GASB 34, which happened many years ago, requires schools to track and establish a way to track their fixed assets. This school district is not doing that at all. To be honest, the last 2 years of financial statements for your fixed assets is probably off. Your prior auditor, I'm not sure what his company's name was. I know he's out of Rutland. When I requested information from him for fixed assets, we got no response. I have had a conversation with Elizabeth. Her plan is, I believe, this year to get in contact with a lot of the department heads, maintenance and whatnot, and to come up with a listing of fixed assets. We at RHS Smith actually have a database with probably 200 or so clients, so their fixed assets is readily accessible. Elizabeth and Joanne, if Joanne wants, she could have access to that database, and so she can maintain it and whatnot. Like I said, GASB 34, I think, went into play 15 years ago. That required schools to track fixed assets, so you're a little bit behind the ball on that one. For other ones, I know the state of Vermont back in October went out to RFP for an accounting software. I don't think they're going to make it mandatory. I haven't heard if anybody won yet. Have you yet had it?
They are under review right now by their professional consultants.
Okay, so they haven't made a decision
They
yet.
haven't.
And they were supposed to make it.
They made a decision about who the vendor is, but now they're negotiating a contract, and they
Okay.
haven't disclosed to
Was it
any of
Tyler?
us who
Was-
it is.
oh,
We don't know.
Oh, really?
They're not
Well, I
telling
heard only 3 actually did, and 2 of them were Tyler software, so I'm assuming Tyler probably got it. But I believe that it won't be a requirement for you to use the software. It'll just be some kind of state run price if you wanted to change software. I believe one of the softwares is probably going to be Infinite Visions, and I know that that software is being used throughout Vermont already currently in some school districts. And also another thing from the state is they actually came up with a new chart of accounts for schools. I don't believe that's been finalized yet either. I think they've been working on it at least a few years that I'm aware of. And I've actually seen this chart of account. It is massive, to say the least. And I believe what they're trying to do is I don't know if everybody's familiar with a stat report. It's a report that every school district in the state of Vermont needs to fill out at the end of the year that gives you, the state all the revenues, expenses, and whatnot that the school took in for whatever fiscal year. I think what the state's moving to is they're going to upload or download, however you look at it, the financial information from each school. So instead of filling out a stat report, all they have to do is hit a button and the information will be sent to the state. So which is good because I hear a lot of business managers do not like the stat report.
About the fixed assets,
Yes.
so we have a policy about capitalization of assets, and I just got a report about that.
Just got a report, Bill's not up to speed on that.
Okay, so we might be doing what you're saying we're not doing.
Oh, perfect. Problem was you haven't been doing it the last few years.
That's right, you looked last
He's
year.
looking
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Okay,
And again, a problem that happened is when we come in and we're a new auditor, we send a request for information from your prior auditor, and he gave us nothing.
Okay.
Question? No, Lori.
Yeah, thank you. On the same vein, I don't have a great memory, but I thought we had some feedback to the board that this project was already underway with Tanya.
The software program?
No, the assets.
Oh, fixed, yes,
Assets.
it was reported to the board that the information was being collected. It had not been completed.
So does she have a start?
I have a sheet that I recruited many of the staff members to assist with in October, basically when these guys were working on the audit for last year. I corralled everyone, had everyone do a massive inventory of what you actually have for your buildings, your fixed assets, pieces of equipment, large equipment that are in your buildings that would qualify based on that policy that you have in place for your capitalization. And we came up with a pretty robust list of all of the fixed assets. I passed that along to, I think it was done on October 27th, to Joanne. I think we did pass it on to the audit. Of course, it was very late in coming as they were finalizing all of their on-site work, and they're auditing last year, not the current year.
So what I would say, and Elizabeth's correct, she did give me some information. Here was the problem. It was the huge variance on what the information she gave us to what your prior auditor said you had for fixed assets. So instead of restating 5 financial statements, what we'll do is when we get a complete listing and we're very solid about it, we're probably going to have to restate your net assets for FY18, or someone's going to have to restate net assets for FY18.
And then on the point that the auditor didn't respond to you, that's infuriating. And I wanted to know if we made an official complaint to the Vermont Board of Professional Regulations. Joanne?
Yes, we did. We did.
And did we ever get a response from them?
I think that complaint was made by a previous board chair.
But, so we never
I am
followed up
not
on
aware of
it,
any
or?
response.
Well, I'm not sure that.
I'm not saying
sure
we
that
did
the-
not follow up on it. I'm saying I don't recall what the outcome was.
And I'm not sure you
But
had
we
been
can-
notified anyway, ma'am.
Okay.
No?
No.
In fact, I do recall that now, Laurie. We were told that the complaint was received, and if any further information was required, they would be in contact with the central office.
Okay.
But any further action would not be something that we would be privy to.
Correct.
Okay, and this was all done by Bill, and so we don't have copies of this, because what I was going to suggest is that we offer yet another official complaint if our auditors, who we're paying lots of money for, can't get our information, which is ours.
Right.
I want the Vermont Board of Regulations to know.
So we could file a new complaint.
Yeah, this is crap. Sorry.
So let me follow up on the work that Bill did. I'll do more research around that piece and get back to the board, and then you all can make a decision
All
about
right,
how you'd like to
thank you.
proceed.
And ma'am, there's one thing you said absolutely correct. These are your financial statements.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions on the first two? No? Third question asks is, do you have any recommendations or concerns regarding our internal controls? I do not. You have individuals doing things that they should be doing, and then the same individuals are not doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I don't know if I said that right or not, but I hope so. Anyway, your internal controls are very well, and I assume with Elizabeth with Elizabeth there now, it'll probably just get better. You do have enough staff at the central office to be able to do a reconciliation while the person's not doing AP or payroll and whatnot, so I don't have any concerns with your internal controls.
Can I expand on that, please?
Sure can, ma'am.
You had it right, it's Lori. You can call me. So we had a pretty extensive management letter.
I agree.
Okay. But that doesn't cover internal controls?
It does.
Okay. So the internal controls that you addressed in here, those are issues?
Correct.
Okay. So,
But some of the stuff in the management letter doesn't have to do with internal controls.
Okay.
Like, and then I just looked at your management letter just briefly. Some of the stuff that is listed on your, like student activity counts, that's not an internal control issue. That's more of a oversight maybe issue, I'd say. And And there's
We can argue
and there's ways that you can, there's ways with oversight, and I've been working with some other schools on student activity counts, making maybe the board aware of the disbursements that are going through the student activity counts on a monthly basis. I mean, when's the last time a school board member, signed off on a warrant for student activity accounts? Never. So, I mean, if you're not having any oversight other than the principal and the secretary on student activity counts, there's a concern or an issue with us.
Well,
Because-
they are in our warrant, actually.
Okay.
Disbursements are.
For student
'Cause I
activities?
looked at one.
Oh, you have for student activities?
Uh-huh.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Is that recently?
Some of them are going through the general fund checking right now because we're transitioning it all over. So they are showing up in the current warrants.
Perfect, good. That's great.
And then there's also a little creation of an account that we did if there's any situation where they're trying to pay someone payroll that is going to be reimbursed by a student activity, instead of it going through that fund, it's going through regular payroll. There's an account number for it.
I like when people listen to my recommendations, it's great.
We do too. We do too.
Question 4, are the financial statements, contracts, and disclosures adequately described to support our goals of transparency? Transparency is a hard word, or almost impossible to come to fruition when it comes to schools, just because there are so many dollar values, debits and credits running through a financial software that disclosing all of that is near impossible. However, what I can tell you is that, when I do an audit, I don't go to pennies, I can tell you that, but I go down to the bare bones. In this audit with Elizabeth, we didn't just focus on FY 17 figures. We actually went into the FY 18 year just because of the closeout of the supervisory union. So, again, transparency, who reads the audit report? So again, are your numbers transparent? I mean, I'd say maybe 1 out of 100 individuals in the school district read throughout the audit report, and then probably half of that 100 probably understand what's going through the audit report. So again, transparency is not easy to come with, but as an auditor, when I come to your school district, I ask for everything, the kitchen sink, the spoons, and everything. Do I get through it all? Hopefully. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes last year I could say it was a really tough year. Like I said, I had Martha sweating. We had piles and piles. George can attest to this. He came in last year and talked to me. We had so much paper pile last year, and FY 16 was crazy. 17 was much smoother, less paper piled everywhere. It seems like you guys were a little bit more prepared this year, so that was good. Question number 5. Are there any activities in which we are engaged that could have a taxable impact? Well, I'm definitely not sure what this question means. However, you are a non-taxable organization, so I would hope not. However, there are instances where I have noticed, mostly in your student activity accounts, where you have paid tax on services or products that you purchased. But for the most part, I'd say no. The dollar value is very small compared to your millions of dollars of budget. I'm not going to speak directly on a subject that Elizabeth and I have talked to after your audit, but I would say that I do have some concerns on some things that have happened or have come to light since this audit report has been drafted. I know Elizabeth is dealing with it. What people need to understand in a school district is that you operate a school district with a certain budget. In Vermont, however, you can overspend that budget. But there's money flowing in so many other directions other than the money that's in your budget that you just need to make sure that you have a financial individual with her fingerprints on it. And that's all I'm saying is that, Elizabeth is your business manager. She's your financial coordinator. She takes care of the budget, but you need to make sure she's also taking care of other funds that are not in coordination with your budget. Well, let's see. You had a program or something, I think it was running at the high school, that they were doing raffle tickets or something.
Poll tickets.
Poll tickets. in a school. That's gambling. I mean, I've never heard this before in a school district, and when she told me this, I cringed. You know, again, anytime there's dollar value or money or anything that's being exchanged, you should make sure that the financial person is aware of it so she could let you know whether or not that is kosher. Okay? Let's see. Where was I? Number 6. What does each footnote in the audit really mean? Oy vey.
Thank you all day.
So I'm going to give you a brief. Because note 1, so if I was to ever tell any of you to read the audit report, I would always say read note 1 first. Because what note 1 gives you is descriptions, terminology, and whatnot of what some of the words and whatever mean in the audit. It's always the same. It's a boilerplate note. It doesn't change in any audit reports unless you don't have a certain fund or whatever. But that is probably the most important note you could read if you want to read this document. Note 2 is always a cash note. It always tells you how much cash or investments you have. And if you in note 2, if you were to read that you were uncollateralized in any of your monies, that would be a red flag. Meaning that if you had $1 million in the bank, but you only had FDI insurance of $250,000, that would mean that $750,000 of that $1 million would be uncollateralized. Meaning that if the bank went under, you'd have a chance of losing that. Now, I'm not saying you do. I'm pretty sure all your money's collateralized, but that's what Note 2 would tell you. Note 3 is capital assets. Note 4 is long-term debt. Note 5. It's probably like assigned fund balances, restricted fund balances. 7 would be the same thing. 8. 9 would be overspent appropriation. 10 and 11 and 12 gets into your pension. So here's my description of what the notes are. If you looked at your statements or your schedules, at the bottom of that, it always says, see accompanying note. Because like in Statement A, if you look at Statement A, it would say you have capital assets of $10 million. Just one number. But if you go to the notes, it actually breaks it down by buildings, land, and stuff like that. So what the notes are is that they are a descriptive to the information that's provided in the statements or in the schedules. It just breaks down the information a little bit more in case you were wondering, oh, I got $10 million in assets. What is that $10 million? Or I got $10 million in debt. What is that $10 million? So that's all it is it's more descriptive of the numbers that are in your statements and your schedules, except for one, which I told you what one was. Let's see. 7. Is there adequate cash flow to fund operations for next school year? How prepared are we for unexpected expenditures? The first question I would say is yes. Then I'd say, have you had any cash flow problems so far in FY18? No. And you could think, I'm not going to say that. How prepared are we for unexpected expenses? You know, Vermont's very unique, as it allows school districts, school unions to overspend their budget. So even if you had an unexpended expenditure and you overspent your budget, there's really no backlash from the state to say bad people or bad business. So again, you know, there's nothing in the state of Vermont that allows schools to not overspend their budget. Will there be within the next 5 years? I'm assuming there will be because of some of the schools in the state that I've seen overspend their budget by quite a bit, which has caused some turmoil in the towns. Hasn't happened here, which is good. But I don't see any issue with your cash flow or any unexpended expenditures. Did you observe any areas of concern related to our internal controls? Did you detect any fraud, material weaknesses, or errors in internal controls? So, no, we did not detect any fraud. And if we did, we'd have to disclose it to you anyway in the management letter. Any material weaknesses or errors in internal controls? In FY16, I think we had a couple concerns with your AP filing. I believe that was much better. Actually, no, it was much better. I did see still some concerns with filing at year end that they weren't sure whether it should go into 19 or 18 or so. Well, it would be 18 or 17, but it was much better than last year in FY16. Your payroll was pretty solid. I-9s might have been a concern. I know Z's been doing a very good job cleaning up your I-9 issues, and actually if you have any in FY18, I'd be surprised, especially since everybody had to go through the new hire process, and I know Z's been all over that. Cash receipting, I don't believe we had any concerns or issues in cash receipting. Your bank statements, which were your bank reconciliations, were on your management control. I think there was a time lapse between some of the bank reconciliations be done. Again, I don't expect that to be any problems in FY18. So I think you're very solid in the internal control issue, as long as, again, you don't have any staff turnover, which could cause a problem. Number 9, were there any disagreements with the administration regarding accounting or reporting matters? Joanne's a control freak. Just kidding, Joanne. No, I don't think so. I think her and Elizabeth get along very well. I don't deal with Joanne a lot when I'm there. I go straight to the financial person. I do have some conversation with Joanne, usually the first day or two I'm there, in case she has any concerns or needs me to check into anything. Like I said, everybody was very responsive to my questions and whatnot. You did have some turnover in the special ed director. Okay, curriculum, which caused a little bit of problem with the federal auditing. But she did call me back, I think, on Thursday or Friday, and we got that taken care of too. So, like I said, everybody was very responsive. And then the last question I have on here is, did you uncover any unreported or flagrant conflicts of interest? Were there any issues regarding integrity or competence among the leadership in financial operations? And no, don't have any. Elizabeth did a lot of cleanup before I got there from your other regime, and then I had to help her clean up the rest of it. But I believe, if you were to check out reports currently in your current software, everything's probably pretty solid. I can't answer that, 100% because I haven't done any FY auditing. But I know she has been very adamant getting to me on adjustments and whatnot. So I would believe that your financial stuff is probably very solid currently.
Awesome.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. And any other questions or anything while I'm here?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, go ahead.
I realize.
This is important.
Okay. So in your management letter, you talk about that we should implement an electronic requisition system that does not allow purchase orders to be created if there's no money in the account.
So you currently have a software that will allow that. Okay? Problem is, it just wasn't being utilized.
Okay, so the
So,
reason I asked, because we've had 2 years of in the high school. I've asked this question many times, and the answer I got was that they couldn't produce POs while Tanya was here without that. So that was not correct.
Well, the current financial software you have does allow requisitions, whatnot, and it does actually have an approval process. So it would go to someone in the school, to someone, and it also would allow only 1 or 2 individuals to override a purchase order that was going against a count that was overspent.
Okay, so we were told we had it, we didn't have it, now we have it. I've been told by you personally that we do. I'm aware of that.
There is a separate module called requisitions. Someone had to dig in and understand how to use that module in the accounting system. And we've done that this year. We've actually set it up. Now it's up and running and being used by the maintenance section of all purchasing at this time.
Okay.
So we're getting there, and it's being worked on this year.
Okay.
I can't explain why it wasn't utilized.
But I know, I'm not
year.
asking you to.
Is maintenance the guinea pig?
It's
Maintenance is
just,
the guinea pig, and they tend to have a
lot more.
sizable amount of
I agree.
purchases. They also are being overseen by one person who is physically housed here in this building when they're overseeing all the maintenance in all the buildings.
So when is your plan to go district-wide?
Next year, July 1.
Good.
so, perhaps I was asking the question inappropriately?
No, I
when
don't think so,
asked
Lori.
it? Okay, it's very concerning that I asked the question, I got an answer, and come to find out it wasn't true.
Right.
I also think there might have been a little bit of a misunderstanding of when you were consolidating, because it sounded to me like last year there might have been at least one school that was using the requisition system, at least for a period of time, and then somehow that stalled out when you hit July 1st and went consolidation. I'm not really sure why that happened either.
So a timeline for having everybody on board, I didn't hear it.
July 1st.
July 1st, okay. And then in the management letter, it talks about the general ledger's out of balance?
Yeah,
How
so.
the heck does
Beginning
that
balances, I
happen?
think that was.
Yeah, it was. So, well, if it's in the beginning, it was probably in the ending, I would assume. I'd have to look.
Well, right, it ends up in the ending.
So let's go back to FY16, where when I came in, your chart of accounts was an absolute disaster. We're talking, you know, when I took the audit report from the prior auditor, we had the numbers that were in your system, nothing tied out. Not only did they not tie out, you at the bottom, when it's supposed to say 0, didn't say 0. So what I did in 16 was we did a lot of work, not just I, but we did a lot of work to try to, you know, fix your general ledger. However, when Elizabeth came to you, I think probably a couple days after, she called me and said, we got a major problem. The GL is not looking quite right. So she sent me the GL. I took a look at it, and I think over the next month or so after that, me and her fixed all of your GL accounts. So like I said, like 10 minutes ago, I believe every single one of your accounts in every single one of your schools, now it's just one district, should be very solid.
Okay. In the management limiter, again, there's a conversation about no stipend procedures.
So in most schools, what usually happens is, you know, usually prior to September 1 or whenever you start school, the principals usually come to the board and say, this is who we have for stipend people that we'd like to get paid, you know, during fall or spring for these sports and whatnot. And usually the board says yay or nay, we approve it all. And then, you know, then usually the financial office will have a sheet listed out of who's going to be receiving it at what time, and if it's a, you know, a semi-annual or a quarterly payment that goes. So there's more of a structure to it, and it's been approved, you know, not some kind of handwritten thing that comes to the payroll saying, you know, Bill Hall's getting $2,000 for swimming, whatever. So, you know, and again, you got to remember, the board is the ultimate approval almost of everything that goes in and out of this school district, okay? Whether or not you see it or not, that's something that you need to determine whether or not you feel comfortable not seeing it. However, you know, and I think we get into this also, you know, a lot of times you'll see donations going into student activity accounts. The school board is the only authorization to be able to accept donations. It's actually in state legislation or something like that. So every donation should be going to the school board to accept a donation. School board members need to be aware of what their powers and responsibilities are. One of them is donations. Another one should be accepting positions for stipends. Also, on a conversation I heard earlier, you know, about teacher or employee staffing. In a lot of school districts, I see, you know, throughout the year, especially before school starts, usually the superintendent will come in and say, I approve Bill Hall for a math teacher in 9th grade. I approve this person for a teacher in social studies. And usually the board says yes, yay and nay. Does that happen in this school district? Well, that's very good. So what you just need to remember is, you know, donations come through school board. They should all come through school board. Stipend should probably go through school board, just like she's making a nomination for me for math class. She should be making a nomination for me for swimming. Because again, it's a payroll decision that you're making to allow this person to receive another stipend.
I believe we make a distinction between contractual employees and non-contractual employees. When we okay contractual employees, but we do not okay non-contractual. I would think that the stipends would be contractual. It's contractual professional? Only professional, not contractual.
Right.
No, we approve professional positions, not non-professional, because, well, that's what the law says.
Correct. I agree with that.
Okay. And,
So the stipend, so like a coach or something would not be professional.
it's not only coaches, but it's also teachers that do summer school.
I'm just telling you what I
after
see.
school.
And what I'm saying is that I'm just telling you what I see other school districts do. Almost every school district that I do, when I read minutes, I'll see the professional staff being accepted, but I also see coaches being accepted for whatever coaching position, whatever they're doing.
Do that too.
Interesting. Okay.
Let us use this as a conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, so, great. then at some point in the
But no
future.
matter what, you still need to have good documentation that goes to your payroll department that's listing out the individuals that are gonna be receiving the stipend, what payroll they're receiving the stipend on, and how much they're receiving the stipend for.
Okay. So at some point in the future, I'm gonna be asking, how are those stipend procedures going? Anyway, just thought I'd let you know. Good. So then the last thing was, and I didn't get all the way through this, but, I think this is enough. We had some problems with the federal audit because we didn't have our curriculum person on top of it. What was
Yeah,
that?
so anytime you have an employee being paid out of federal funds, there are some procedures you have to do. And one of them is either doing a timesheet, doing a PAR, and there's one in an activity report, semi-annual certification. So there's three things. One of those three things you need to do for any employee that's being paid out of federal funds.
Mm-hmm.
And we found some individuals that were not doing one of those three.
And normally that would be the curriculum director that would catch that kind of
It
thing.
all depends on who oversees the grant usually, or payroll.
Positions are overseen by the curriculum.
Okay.
Okay. So we haven't had a curriculum director for many years.
Well, since October.
Okay, what I meant was a full-time curriculum director since Carol Spencer left,
Right.
which is many years.
And it wasn't all of them that were missing, ma'am. It was maybe a 2 or 3 or a handful that were missing. And I think it was, because the semi-annual has to be done January and then July after the fact. The personal activity report, which is, sometimes more detail, has to be done, I think within every 2 months, and then the timesheet has to be done obviously every week or 2 weeks, depending on your pay cycle.
Thank you. So at some point, maybe we should have a conversation about the director. I didn't realize that was part of that job. So anyway, then the last thing I wanted to ask you is, what about basketball proceeds? People pay to go into the basketball games. Are those considered donations?
So, no, but I'd love to get in this conversation. So, gate receipts are a huge moneymaker for schools. Basketball and football are, moneymakers. What I don't like seeing is gate receipts in student activity accounts, because that's not where they belong. Student activity accounts are either donations, fundraising for a certain purpose. Usually what should happen is gate receipts should go into your financial software under a special fund called gate receipts. It all gets put into there, and then they can use it for, usually what it's used for is, field upgrades or, new bleachers or scoreboards or something like that, to benefit the students who help, rake in some of that money because they're out there performing. Unfortunately, I don't hear these terms much anymore, which is great, but a lot of individuals lately have been calling these student activity funds slush funds for principals or for students or, whoever works at that school. However, and the high school just gets blamed the most because they usually have the most gate receipts, obviously. But what I'd recommend is to get those gate receipts out of the student activity account and put them into the financial software so you can have a little bit more oversight. Because in some school districts, I've seen gate receipts exceed $100,000. So.
And we don't have any idea how much it is, right? Because it all goes into the student activity account, is that correct? Okay, and a special fund would have to be created by the board?
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily?
Not necessarily. No, that could be a
and who would-
financial.
I'm sorry?
That can be a financial person's, it might be better to come from the board to let the principals and the schools know that, gate receipts are going to be now switched over to the central office. I mean, it might mean more if it comes to you, but, Joanne and Elizabeth can make that determination.
Mm-hmm. And they can also make the determination of what the funds will be used for?
Sure.
That doesn't have to be a board thing?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
George?
Is there any other item in your management letter that we should be aware of?
Well, so this is not in the management letter, but I don't know if Elizabeth or Joanne has brought this up or not, but it's my understanding that you've seen your fund balances for all of your schools for FY17. And it just, I don't know the word to say for here, but I'm surprised I haven't had any questions on the VUHS fund balance. That went from,
VUES.
was it
Negative
VUES?
14 to over $1 million.
Like $1 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
So is everybody all set with why that happened?
Nope.
So here's one big reason why this happened. There was you had a negative $367,000 raise of taxes for your negative fund balance, right?
257.
It was done twice. Yeah.
What?
It was done twice.
I mean, we charged the taxpayers
twice. Yeah. You had unbalanced budget in FY17. I thought it was for 3 something, but maybe you're right at 257. But that was that's quarter of why that jumped up so high. Another reason why is they had some savings. I think that was in the maintenance budget or something like that, that they weren't sure they were going to spend the money and they ended up not spending it, and that also helped with the $1 million.
And that's
But-
the high school, right?
Was it the high
That's
school?
the high school.
I thought it was a VUHS, wasn't it?
That's VUHS.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought it was. Yeah, so again, I noticed the discrepancy in the budget, and I think I talked to Elizabeth about it when I was there. For some reason, someone didn't take your total revenue, subtract out the 257 to match up your expenses, so the local taxes got charged twice on the $257,000. And for your other management comments, George, what I'd say is, there's a couple schools that have a school lunch deficit that the board needs to deal with. And also, I think it's either VUHS or VUES that has a capital project and then like a capital
Elementary school.
reserve
Right.
that needs to be
VUES.
combined.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, nothing else.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One more. Credit card payments. So it says, while performing the audit the above-mentioned year, it was noticed on several occasions that late credit card payments were made. In some instances, late charges were assessed. This is something that George and Chris and I are very familiar with at the high school, and we've been asking forever, why are we paying late fees? Why are we paying interest? Why are we paying sales tax? And I mean, how many times do we have to ask this question?
I can tell you right now, Lori, I hate credit cards. I hate them with a passion. It's a problem in every single school district or town that I deal with. Every single one, because an individual will take a credit card and go to a conference or something, and they'll go for a restaurant. They'll get the receipt, but they won't get the itemized receipt. Automatic write-up. I don't know what you purchased. Or the reason for late fees are sometimes the invoices or the sales receipts don't get back to the central office in time, so they have to wait and hold it before they can pay it because they want to make sure they have backup because they don't want me coming in and yelling at them saying, what's going on? Why are you paying a bill without backup?
Well, they can pay the bill and put the backup on the file
You know what
cabinet
happens
and
then?
follow up. I
You know what happens then? Oh, I forgot all about
I do
it.
know what happens.
won't let us
Not
do
to the amount of, $21 million is our total budget, right?
Yeah, and again-
we're talking about huge amounts of disbursements. Okay.
But you're not paying huge amount of tax, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
You're not.
So again, this is looking back, so do we have a plan moving forward to remedy this? There was a.
Get rid of your credit cards.
There was a suggestion to,
There you
repeal
go.
some of them, right?
Vendors that aren't turning in receipts, paying transactions, having people turn in those transaction receipts immediately as soon as they've made the charge versus, waiting until the statement comes and you get an email that says, hey, I need 3 of your receipts, don't have them, that kind of thing. Trying to get people to be more proactive and kind of that threat that if you're a repeat offender and you're not turning in your receipts, we will not be able to continue allowing you to have a credit card. Seven?
I'm not prepared to answer that right at the moment, but I will. Thank you.
Too many, Lori.
Yes, yes.
Sorry.
Can I make one suggestion about the credit card thing?
Oh.
If you are going
I don't know, Kenny.
Sure.
We've reviewed our own procedures, and we make people sign a statement that they have read and understand what the credit card is used for. And if there's one mistake, they don't use it.
That is true. I've seen that a lot more schools do that.
That's what we do as an example, and so far, I hope it's real. So far, so good.
Well, that's good.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I'd like to thank Bill.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Really,
Yeah,
we appreciate.
Take care. And like I tell everybody when I leave a meeting, if you ever have any questions, Elizabeth has my phone number. Feel free to give me a call.
Thank you for coming tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all the work. Thank you.
Drive safe home.
Okay, excellent. So we do have one more presentation. Whew, all right. So,
That's quite all right,
yeah,
don't worry
sorry
about
about that.
I'd like to introduce Dana Peterson to the board. Dana is the current director and also superintendent of the Patricia Hannaford Career and Technical Center. And we know from past history that it's great to get in front of the director and the superintendent on an annual basis to talk about programs, but also to talk about a little bit about the budget. So welcome, Dana.
Thank you very much. While this is all coming up again, I just needed to wake up. I know that everybody's been sitting for a long time, so it wouldn't bother me, and it would actually make me feel a little better if everybody just stood up, took a little stretch, and I'll be happy to talk while the camera comes back on, but it has gone back to sleep. So I was trying to keep it awake as much as possible. Let me introduce myself first of all. My name is Dana Peterson. I'm a longtime educator in Vermont, and I have both middle school and high school teaching and administrative experience. And I also have some international travel experience, education experience, and study experience. And I've come to the Career Center at the Patricia Hannaford Career Center in Middlebury as a result of my interest in blending both academic performance and technical education, technical learning. So I'm very excited to be at the center, and I am really pleased with the students and their participation. I was particularly warmed by some of the presentations that students from Virgins did as we did our 10th grade presentations this fall with respect to presenting some of the programs that we have to offer. And the students from Virgins Union High School did a very good job representing themselves and our programs to their fellow classmates. So without any further ado, I'm going to try to jump to the presentation format. And, oh no. I've been standing here for a while trying to make sure that everything would work right. There we go. I just took care of that slide. So the budget slide. Just so you have a point of comparison, our budget proposed for next year is $3,468,534. And what I've done is I've given you 7 years history, and it is the lowest budget in 7 years that we are proposing before the voters for this year. So it's down $14,025, and that was with a lot of work with respect to increasing fixed costs and so on. But we were very proud of the fact that it's the lowest in 7 years.
Did you accomplish that without staff layoffs?
Yes. You're welcome. The projected per pupil cost expenditure, that's not as rosy as the achievement that we were able to make in terms of the overall budget. So our estimated tuition for next year is $12,899, and that is in comparison to $11,926 from last year, is a difference of $963 or a change of 8.16%. And we have here, that's what the local assessment would be. So that's exactly the same. The tuition from the state is $8,567. Last year was $8,236, a difference of $331. That's additional money that the state gives us per student. And so our total cost at the Hannaford Career Center for next year in terms of total investment by either the state or the local taxpayers is $21,466. Generally speaking, technical education is a little bit more expensive. Our total cost then is up per pupil by 6.47%.
Could you go back to that? Did you say that's 21,000 per student or 21,000 per FTE?
I'm sorry, per FTE.
Thank you.
Right, because we serve a lot more students than FTE. I have to check myself. Thank you for the correction. I have to check myself because I'm not used to talking in terms of FTE. Most of my experience has been on the general ed side, not talking about the technical ed side. But yes, it is per FTE.
FTE student.
Yes,
Oh, okay, thank you.
student FTE, right, as opposed to a staff
Right.
FTE, yeah, there's no correlation with that. So here, again, we have the historical tuition, in terms of transparency, wanting to make sure that people understood where we have been. So since 2012-13 school year, we have the difference in terms of in terms of cost per student, and we also over here have our 6th semester FTE, which is actually what drives that per pupil cost. So even though we've been able to reduce our budget over the last 7 years, our costs per student go up, just in terms of looking at 160 students, 7 years ago, and 127 FTE students. We serve many more than the students' FTE. So we have 127 FTE for next year projected, but we're looking at, we serve currently approximately somewhere in the range of 500 students, depending on of different levels of FTE. Some might be a full-time FTE, some might be a half-time FTE, something might be a quarter.
Can I ask a quick question?
Does that include the students off-site as well as on-site?
That's everybody.
Okay.
That's everybody that is considered enrolled in a Patricia A. Hannaford Career Center program.
Okay.
That's everybody.
So that's roughly a 20% decrease in students? Full time?
Yes, yeah, about that, yep. Just almost exactly.
But your money didn't go up that much, your
No, the money is,
expenses.
right.
So
In fact, our expenses are going down.
Yeah, you really, yeah, but per student, per pupil is up. So but you actually, it's a skewed figure because of the dropping enrollment.
Yes, it is a skewed figure. You said it, I didn't, I would not present that. But I'll show you a little visual that explains what you're getting at, I think, in just a moment.
Can I ask a real quick question? The
yes.
21,000, it kind of makes me jealous, because we can't do 21,000 per student. We're capped at 17 or 17.8 or something like that, right? How is it? How come you guys get out of that? Why do we have to, do you know what I see?
Well, yeah. What I can tell you is, yes, it is more expensive to operate technical centers than it is to operate an elementary school or even a secondary school. I can't go into how that is or why that is.
Yes, yes,
I'm a little too new myself in terms of all of the components that go in to be able to tell you why. We do have lots of capital equipment that need to be updated. We do get some grant money for that, but that's part of it. Instructors are programs. If you want to have a program, you have to have an instructor. If you don't have an instructor, you cut the program, and then you don't have students to serve. And there's a real need for workforce development. But anyway,
Thank you.
you're welcome. The Career Center programs are singular. That's what I was just talking about. Each instructor is a program. If we cut instructors, we cut programs and opportunities for students, as well as opportunities for employment in the business community. We currently have approximately 30% capacity, and this is really the important thing for folks to know, for additional students. We could serve an additional 30% of our student capacity and not charge an extra $1. So we are being, to a certain extent, underutilized at the moment. And that's something that I've talked with staff about. We did some creative scheduling, and we offered an extra section of our Automotive 101 just as a trial this spring, and we were able to fill it with 10 students. So we offered the program, students came. We're hoping to do more and more of that. So here's the little visual. Say our costs are $10,000, and say that we have 40 students from one school, 30 students from another school, and 30 from a third school. The per pupil cost would be $100 per pupil for the 100 students. 100 times 100, 10,000, right? So one school would pay $4,000, the other two would pay $3,000. And I just have it over here for those people who are a little more visual. Okay, so the cost would be pretty similar between schools. All of a sudden, if we decide we can take in 10% more kids, and it's proportionately spread, now all of a sudden, this high school, instead of having 40 kids, has 44, 33, 33. Now this is the point you were just making, sir, that it now drops to $90.91 per kid. And that's what we're trying to work on, and we're reaching out to our communities to try to make people aware that these opportunities are available for students. Once again, this proportionality stays the same. There's an error on my sheet. There's one of those should be 4,000. I think the blue one, the green one. That should be 4,000. We have additional capacity and would love to serve more students. We're working collaboratively with all sending schools to coordinate on proficiency attainment, and we're having conversations at both the administrative level and the teacher level to coordinate with our sending schools. We are very proud of our relationships with those sending schools, and we're very proud of the responsiveness that we get. So we're very, very pleased. And this community is extremely supportive, and we appreciate that. Invitation, a little bit of salesmanship. On Thursday evening, we are having our open house and maker fair, first annual maker fair. We have over 21 makers from the Addison County area coming to do demonstrations about what they do in terms of tinkering and how they are excited about what they can produce. And we're hoping to be able to use our facility to be able to foster greater makerism and to provide opportunities for the adult community to come in on a different level in makers through our adult ed programs to actually access some of our equipment so that they can actually promote their businesses and enterprises. And I think the final thing is our YouTube video. And so I just have to minimize this. And I have to pull up the video. And I have to change the settings because it thinks for me and I don't like that. I want to duplicate. We haven't, the date was the date of the Maker Faire. We're not sure we're going to make that, but that's our goal. So yes, we are working on a new website, and we're pleased to see that people are linking us to their home websites. We appreciate that. Oops, I'm good. I think I just got to get it to play. Oops, I got to turn it on.
To the field, to the studio, to the classroom, to the community. Wherever you want to go, chart a course for the future. It starts at the Hannaford Career Center. At Hannaford Career Center, you'll learn the skills you need for long-term success in your career, college, and beyond. Not sure if the Career Center is right for you? Think again. With so many opportunities, all you need is to find the one that's right for you. So where do you fit in?
Students have a little bit of creativity in terms of what they put in.
Because if you're thinking about your future, you're already thinking Hannaford Career Center.
Thank you very much. That's all I have. If I could ask for a favor, we have a trade newsletter. It's a digital newsletter that we've put out just this year. Oops. I got it.
To the field.
So enthusiastic.
Well, you know,
the
my
studio,
problem is that I put these on. I'd cycle through. We go to do presentations. I forgot to take it off. But if you would like to be on our email list for getting the trade so that you can know what's happening at the Career Center, it comes out bi-weekly, please just sign up. I'll give you a pen, too. And you can just do this as you're conducting the rest of your business. I'll be happy to pick it up sometime at the back. Where would you like me to start? Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Sorry about the, hope I was under.
No, you did great. We apologize for it being so late.
That's okay. It was good to actually see a board at work, and so I appreciate the opportunity to have been a participant. And
come anytime.
I actually think I had a good suggestion. So.
Yeah.
Good.
I appreciate the invitation and your good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the presentations for this evening. And it brings us to superintendent and business manager reports.
So just very briefly before I hand it over to Elizabeth, I did add another doodle date because I was not finding, not everyone filled out the doodle for the retreat for March. So if you would respond to that, hopefully in the next 24 hours, I'd like to get that scheduled. And so next, some of you may have been privy to some community questions about our audit reports and the use of our surplus, and it generated some conversation amongst and between some individuals at the state level. And I've asked Elizabeth to come and explain what those questions were and our response to those questions.
Okay. I think one question that I want to, some of the questions are kind of interrelated. So the first one I wanted to start with was actually, I think it came from Lori originally, just regarding when we had our audit drafts put out, and correct me if I'm wrong if it wasn't Lori, looking for, there's a letter that references internal controls and such that also comes along with the audit drafts. So we do actually have those from the auditors. They are in draft form, and there are pieces in them where they have blanks because they're missing dates. They're waiting for the finalization of the audits to be able to put those dates in. So we didn't submit those with the drafts, but we have them available in draft form, and if people want to see them, we're more than willing to pass those along. They're just not finalized. So there's that. They're pretty boilerplate also. They're pretty much across the board for every single school. You're reading the same exact thing. So if you see one, you're going to pretty much know every single district. The next thing I want to share is just a brief kind of rundown of just the review process for the audit drafts, because I think it's important for everyone to understand how it kind of has worked this year and how it typically works, at least for me, in other schools that I've worked with. And I've actually worked with this same auditing firm in another school district before coming here. So this seems to work pretty well. This year we were delayed in getting audit draft figures even at this point from RHR. They were delayed in getting information back to us. They took on more clients, is my understanding. This year in Vermont, I believe there was one auditing firm that went out of the state of Vermont and is no longer doing audits here. So they took on a lot of those clients. We also did call them back into our audit to have them finish and be a little more thorough, knowing that you're consolidating and wanting cleaner numbers. As Bill shared, he looked into some of your FY18 to see if we're doing things in a different way than how they were done last year to make sure that our audits going forward are in a better place. When we had our January 10th meeting with the board and we shared those potential audit draft figures, we were not in possession of actual audit drafts at that point. So I just wanted to make that clarification. I don't know if anybody, I think that was pretty clear, but maybe not. So as of the 10th of January, we did not actually have the audit drafts in hand. We received our first audit draft from RHR on the 19th of January, so 9 days later. At that point, when we receive an audit draft, we get a letter with that audit draft that asks us if we accept the audit draft as is, if we have questions, comments, concerns, whatever, and it goes from there. So we start a review process. And when I review an audit, I read the entire thing, even though there were 5 of them, and they all have some boilerplate pieces to them that are very similar, but I still read through them because I feel like I need to ask questions and be able to fully understand everything in case somebody asks me the question. So I do that review, and then I start drilling into actual numbers that are in your audit draft, and I start running reports out of your accounting software, and I compare all of those numbers to the end results that are in your audit draft. If I see any discrepancies, something I don't understand, even if it's, $20, I send back a list of questions to the auditing firm, sometimes with that letter confirming that we have questions and that we're not ready to finalize those audit drafts, because in some cases, your numbers could actually change based on the questions and conversation that we have. So in this one scenario, that first audit draft that came through on the 19th of January, I completed my review fully and asked questions of the auditors by January 26th. So 5 days later, 6 days later. And then they were able to get back to me. It was a back and forth conversation over some of the questions, but the resolution of those questions for that one audit draft came on January 30th. So I'm just giving you kind of the timeline of how that kind of consistently works. Typically, they give you about 3 weeks of review time from draft to final point of agreement and sending back those letters. Right now, we've agreed on 4 of your audit drafts and given them full permission to go ahead and finalize. We still have 1 that we are going back and forth with RHR on. It is not something that involves your general fund or your food service fund. At this point, it's actually your scholarships on your high school. So that is just one of the numbers in question, and we're going back and forth trying to resolve that one so that we can finalize that one. So I wanted to get that out there just so that people understand that the figures that came into that meeting on January 10th and any figures where we started presenting fund balance numbers in the annual books that went out, that's where those numbers began from, is before we actually had a physical draft in hand. So you will see some of those figures change. The other thing I noticed is that in past budget books, you guys had a fund balance sheet that only reflects potentially the larger size fund balances, your general fund, your food service fund, and your capital projects. It doesn't detail all of the other fund balances in there. But I think it's important to note that when your audit drafts come in, if there's something like a deficit in one of those other funds, it's going to affect your audit in the end because somehow you have to fund those deficits. So that can also change your situation as far as how you deal with your surplus. So in that January 10th meeting, we discussed our plan for the surplus, that it looked like we were going to have a sizable surplus, and we wanted to make it known that we had ideas, thoughts, and a plan for what we're going to use that surplus money for. We put forth that we were going to use $650,000 towards your education spending. That was the minimum amount that we chose to put in there. We also had recommendations that we needed to fund any deficits we had. We had sizable food service deficits, so we put in the $423,000 and change to fund those food service deficits. And the remainder, we talked about a capital projects fund, and we actually went forward and had the board approve establishing and putting money into that fund. After further review with our consultants, some community questions, we researched further also with the Agency of Education, and there is a definition difference between a community, a capital projects fund and a capital projects reserve. The differences are minimal. They're in how you generate the money, where the money comes from, and how you spend the money and when you spend the money, and who determines how that money is spent. So after discussing it with the AOE and our consultant, we've decided to kind of pull back on the establishment of that capital improvements fund. The definition is too gray between a reserve and a capital projects fund, and we don't want to, get into that. Basically, we are willing to pull back and wait and reserve our right to set up a capital projects fund once we have final audits in hand. It's been recommended by both the consultant and the AOE that waiting for your budget to either pass or fail, your EEI project to either pass or fail, and to have those final audits in your hands with solid numbers is probably the best bet. We have until June 1st of this year to submit numbers to the Agency of Education. That's when their final budget numbers are actually due to the state of Vermont. So you have until then to really determine whether you want to change any of those revenue numbers that are going to go into your education fund, which means we as a board could decide to put more money towards the education fund than the $650. You could decide that there's, based on your audit drafts, there's another deficit or situation that you need to deal with in this year, and maybe there's not quite enough money to put as much as we had anticipated into a capital projects fund. But nonetheless, the recommendation is that we do pass that decision as a vote to your voters after the town meeting, if we are going to establish the capital improvements fund and actually put money into it. VSA statute does determine that if you have a capital projects reserve, as they're calling it, that you have to go out to the voters. And so that's where we're deciding not to make that determination. We have no problem putting it out to the voters. It would be in a special meeting. Yeah.
So if we wait until after the March elections, then
It has to be a special meeting. It's gonna cost money to have a special vote.
No, it's a vote off the floor, George.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's not a
Okay.
warning, it's not Australian ballot, it's off the floor.
Okay.
You do have to warn it.
We do have to warn
And
it,
you want to
yes.
publicize it so that you get some voter turnout at your meeting, but it's a special meeting. It's in the VSA statute that you can do it that way.
Okay.
And basically, that's just so that the community can vote on the establishment of a capital projects fund and how much you're actually going to use of your surplus money to put in there. And by that point, you will have a firm audit number and firm numbers on everything. One of the points, I think there was another piece to the community questions about, it was clear in your annual books that we had the $650,000 towards the education fund. It was clear in the annual books of how much the food service deficit was. The amount we estimated and put in for your capital projects at the time on that January 10th meeting was more based on an estimate of what a first payment would be potentially on your EEI project in year one. So we didn't drill all the way back to what the total surplus number was in that meeting because we only had drafted numbers. We still only have drafted numbers except for that we have the drafts in our hands. One of the things that came out in those drafts is, and I think Bill mentioned this, when we were doing that review process with your Virgins Elementary School, we discovered there was a deficit situation in your capital projects fund. There's two funds on Virgins Elementary, a construction and a capital projects fund. And in your books, in your accounting program, my predecessor had booked a journal entry that basically rolled up and cleared that deficit with your general fund. It's called an audit entry in the system, but when we discussed it with the auditors, they never received that client-suggested audit entry. So there was clearly a miscommunication between the business manager and the auditing firm in the FY16 audit process, and them not understanding that that was the plan for what they were going to do with that deficit. So that deficit is still sitting on your books, and I didn't know it existed until I actually had their audit draft comparing to your books. So that is another situation that we have to deal with. And there again, it drills in on that dollar figure that we would have used to put in a capital projects fund, but we actually, by law, have to deal with deficits and pay them off like we are the food service deficit. So that's one of the pieces that's going to come into play. I think the other piece is that typically, I think it's important for us to all know that when we send out these annual books and we don't have final audit figures when we send them out, we don't necessarily disclose the exact plan for what any surplus dollars are going to be. And it's actually, according to the state of Vermont, pretty uncommon to do so. It's okay to put forth your idea or your projected plan as long as you're saying it's estimated, but to drill right down to that surplus number and present it in a book, people are going to reference those books for years to come. They're not going to come ask you as a school board, hey, what was the actual number? They're going to go back and find their book, and they, even if it says estimated, they're really going to believe that that's the true number. So it's important to remember that there is that June 1st date out there, that we still have time to be able to determine what exactly is going to happen with the rest of that surplus money. So I think that probably covers it. Does that make sense, everyone?
Okay, so yes, I will take that question, but I am looking at the clock. I know we have a public forum scheduled in about 2 minutes, and I think that it would probably be really nice if we could at least get through the principal's reports and the student report before we recess to the public forum, so that folks who don't need to stay don't. I mean, of course, we want you all to stay and learn about the bond vote, but. Okay, so I think, does that make sense to folks that we carry on for the next couple things, push it back a few minutes and then recess for that?
Can we get his done so he can get out of here?
Yeah, that's what I said, go through the principals and student, yeah. Okay, so
So I
quickly,
just, I
yes.
heard you say it's illegal to carry a deficit. I think that's what you said. We've been carrying a food service deficit for 100,000 years.
Well,
Okay, maybe not
maybe a little
100,000,
exaggeration.
maybe only 10,
For as long as I've been
but a
here, I
very,
believe.
very long time.
Yep.
And so you're saying that we weren't in compliance with the law? And our auditors never told us that.
Says you have to have a plan, at least, for what you're going to do.
We had a plan, didn't you know?
now we have a plan.
We do have a plan.
It was actually identified in the last audit
Yeah.
that we needed to have a plan, and actually, the board was expecting administration to present the plan this spring, after Kathy's had a couple of months under her belt, so that
Okay.
we could have better projections about how many years and in what way we were gonna get our arms around the food service deficit, and then we were able to address it much more quickly because of the surplus.
Right. And did she get very far in that project? Did we get like I mean, obviously it's done now because we have a motion.
Yes, she did, and we feel, if you read the report, and that's in the annual report, it's through increased participation. It's by putting the appropriate amount of money in the general fund to fund it, and it's, looking at bringing in revenue.
I
And the lunch prices.
don't think I
actually.
asked that question correctly, but yes, thank you, that's good. That was good. Thank you.
Yes, George?
The figure for the deficit, what is it?
It's 1.629875.
Sounds
It's
about
the
right.
same. Your general fund is the same as what those drafted figures were that we shared on January 10th. The actual general fund audit draft figures have not changed.
Okay, but the deficit that you're talking about at the graded school?
So the net of that, there's two funds that net together. The deficit that we will have to fund is $107,360.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else for Elizabeth or Joanne on their reports?
Oh, Joanne too?
Yes.
What's the director of learning? Is that curriculum?
I'm changing the
Yes.
title.
Thank you. I
It's-
wanted to know, how are we doing on teacher evaluations? I know the high school was on a 3-year cycle, and
Right.
we can do that next time?
Let's do that next time.
That sounds good. We didn't set tuition? What happened?
We did not set tuition, it did not come to the board. We did announce tuition to the Agency of Education. That was not brought to the board in January as it should have been.
Okay.
It is on the calendar for next year.
It's in the work plan.
It was
It
not
should
in the
be.
work, I don't.
Should be in the work
It
plan.
should
It's
be in
on
the
my
work plan,
calendar.
and it
It
was
will be on
missing
the
on the
work
work plan.
Okay. Well, can we ensure that it'll be on the work plan next year? It's on the work plan now. Good.
Will be.
Thank you. Can we know, I haven't been here for a while, so were we told how we calculate these ratios that they keep throwing around?
Yes.
We do know. Does the board know?
Yeah, I think we talked about it.
We did, okay, so I'm gonna talk to you about that
Yes.
personally, or you maybe.
Yep.
Okay, maybe. Capitalization for assets, the timeline, I don't care.
We heard that.
Yeah.
I heard that this evening. Elizabeth submitted something that I gave to John because it's a required report in alignment of the policies.
I'll talk about all of that in the policy.
Okay.
tab.
In your report, in the financial statements, we have a budget column, we have an adjustment column, and then we have a revised budget column, and then we have blah, 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 blah. So when I see revisions in the budget, those should all net to zero,
Bottom.
but they don't. It was $11,000 at the end.
Okay, so there are 3 funds that make up your general fund. So
So
the
some of those are funds
$11,000 that
transfers?
you're seeing is only at the bottom of the 001 fund. If you go all the way to the very end, they net to zero
Okay.
amongst the 3 funds.
Great.
That make
Thank
up your general fund.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Where is the detailed budget on the website? The line-by-line item?
Yes, we have, it should be. It will be.
It will be.
It will be.
Okay, could you just shoot me
I can make it for you.
An email when it's on?
Because
Yes.
I just want to know,
Yes.
and then, okay, and then the principal reports, I have some questions, or some statements, but we can go on. Thank
Okay.
you. To talk about, okay.
All right. And Elizabeth, thank you for putting filed on time next to all those dates at the bottom so that I
Yes.
don't need to
Oh, sure.
cross-check.
No problem.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Not just the notification,
Me
but the
actually
fact
going
that
and
they
checking
were.
to see the date when they were filed. Yeah,
Right.
okay, yep, that's on time, yep.
Right,
Yeah.
perfect. Anything else for Elizabeth or Joanne before we, yep.
On the administrative procedures and the policy committee, you were gonna just send the supporting documents to the policy committee. Is there a way that other people can access those through? I think that'll be part of John's report. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, principals reports. Principals have anything to add? Any questions, comments for the principals? Yes, Larry?
Sorry.
Yep, no, go ahead.
So I really think it's awesome that the PTO paid for the kids to go to the Snow Bowl from Addison. I just thought that was like
Was it fun?
awesome.
How
And
was the
I
weather?
so wish that she was here still.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I'd love to see that happen for all schools.
Yeah. Great. Okay, and congratulations to the boys basketball, 5-6 basketball. Pretty awesome. And I love the fact that the 3 schools were represented in that team. Is that what I understand? Ferrisburg, I know Addison was, right?
Addison and Virgins.
Just
and
Addison,
then-
Virgins?
And then Ferrisburg had their own.
Oh, they had their own.
Yeah.
And did we beat them?
Wait.
I know. I
Did
can't
we?
be we. I'm cut in the middle. I'm sorry. And then
You are outnumbered here, you know.
No.
I realize that.
It's a unified district, folks.
So I just wanted to mention about Matt's, I think it was, we collaborated with a community partner. I don't have this all well done. To apply for a Cliff book. That's Beth? Matt? Thank you. That sounds so awesome, and if we get it, will you just let us know? Yeah? Okay.
What would the money go to?
For, I can't remember off the top of my head, a specific number of books to go to each kid. It would provide some money for outreach. It provides money for mini grants for teachers to apply for. So it's a number of different author visits. So we had a couple authors visits this year to allow us to expand that moving forward. So.
Would you also just pass on that to Megan Marsh and Amy Foley, thanks? At least for me. Teachers are great when they do this kind of stuff. And BUHS, I love STEAM. That is so cool. I've never even heard of anything like that. I never liked STEM. I really like STEAM. STEAM is really good. So I was really pleased. And do we have a 3D printer?
Yeah, I was wondering that too. We have one
We
here.
do? And we have a die cutter
Wow.
printer?
That's amazing.
We
I
do.
did not know that.
We do.
That's cool.
How do you know?
Is that all?
3D printers are money.
A little one.
Uh-huh.
We can share. We should be able to
Sounds
share.
portable.
Okay.
And sometimes,
Yeah, field trips, right.
sometimes things like that don't take moving well.
Well, it was actually generated by a student.
I saw that. I was just wondering.
So Wendy Russo is technically the advisor. Melissa Brooks, Angela Kunkel, our librarian, Carl Crawford is involved. Michael Thomas is because of the workshop model. So there's
A lot of
coming together to make it happen.
Super cool.
Yeah.
I'm probably forgetting someone, but I have to look on the email list.
Did I see something recently that there's a new German club too?
Yeah, after school. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Have you had any news from Ghana?
We got a picture today, and they were in a classroom setting, out of doors kind of classroom setting, and the kids were sitting with the kids there in the Ghana classroom helping out. And they were all barefoot, and I kept thinking, oh, they should put their sandals on. It's not okay to be barefoot at school.
Great.
So before we wrap up, I wondered during the resource room presentation if we could benefit, if the grade schools could benefit from that program on a smaller basis, especially just what I heard from what's going on in Addison. I hadn't you know, I wonder if we could, anyway, I just thought I'd throw. Oh, nice.
Good. And I also think it's fantastic to read that the ABL program is going to be extended to the other 2 elementary schools as well.
And what
It's
is
a great
ABL? I had that.
action-based learning. So kindergartners are doing letters and learning academic skills in the gym while they're going across balance beams or tracing shapes. And yeah, it's a great program. So cool.
I actually don't want to take time with it right now, but I'd like to know more of what goes on in the guidance. And part of what I'm wondering, you know, there was the day that you were supposed to, the day that the guidance was supposed to be doing the let's talk about classes for next year was a snow day, and that was unfortunate. And but it was a very condensed. My inside information and the people that I talk with talk about a very condensed time frame about choosing classes, and so I would like to know more about what the process, not right now, because there are lots of questions, but I would like, maybe this is for if that could be something we could talk about in the next couple months to understand what's going on and how the office is changing, what the priorities are, what the points, what the goals are.
All right, anything else for the principals?
I really appreciate the reports. I know they're a pain in the butt, but I really appreciate what you guys do. So thank you for doing that for us.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to let Mason do his student report. Thank you, Mason.
Good evening, everyone. Never know how to start these things off. So in terms of academics, students are now fully invested in second semester courses. Of course, quarter 2 has now ended, and we are into quarter 3, so students are fully engaged in their classes. Just to highlight a few things, last week we had a snow day on Wednesday, which did kind of screw up the whole half-day schedule, but it was implemented the following day, which is good. All students are continuing to work on their personalized learning plans, which is, how to implement their own personalized learning into their own kind of class type of learning, I guess. Next week is winter break for students and staff. In terms of athletics, boys and girls basketball is doing very well, which is great to hear. So is VUHS wrestling. They're all underway. Our musical department continues to impress VUHS every single day. They had a great performance at the Castleton Honors Choir on the 26th of January, as well as the 2nd of February. Very, very great performance. In terms of the seniors, I'm very proud to express that we made over $1,500 in the month of January.
Oh, nice.
Excluding expenses, for winter ball, the senior class made around $1,000. And the parent-teacher group has donated $500 toward Project Grad, so $1,500 in 1 month. It's pretty good. We've also secured a guest speaker for the graduation ceremony. We haven't gotten all the details, but Chris Sheehan was a former teacher here, a social studies teacher for 8th grade. He seemed very excited to be able to speak here, so hopefully he can, be a good speaker. Seniors are currently working on their presentations for PLPs. Seniors have different presentations than other grades. They have to have their own kind of more important, I guess, presentation in front of staff and even parents to kind of go through their process in high school. Of course, scholarship deadlines are approaching fast. This Friday is the VSAC scholarship deadline. Walkathon is currently being organized by class officers and the class of 2018, but it's being very difficult to kind of get everyone on board with the same organization. All right, how do I say this? So we had an organization in mind, but they rejected our offer because they said that they already got a lot of donations, which is an upstanding thing to do. So we sent out a survey to the class to try to find, another organization that they would like, and we're waiting on the responses for that. And then, just in terms of extra things, just VUHS continues to excel in terms of their student participation in certain things. Governor's Institute got 2 more students. Lake Champlain Maritime Museum has summer opportunities, of course. As we mentioned earlier, German Club has been revived. And VUHS math team continues to impress all the time. So that's pretty much my report.
Awesome.
Personalized learning plan.
And what's oh, sorry. What's the
Hobie.
Hobie Youth
So
Delegates?
Hobie
Yeah.
is it's pretty much a youth leadership forum that 2 students in 10th grade, I believe, are kind of from Virgins are selected to attend. So.
Okay, I think at this time we will recess this meeting to go into our public forum. All right, so all in favor of recess? Aye. All right. And Tom is in charge of this as chair of the facilities committee, so.
Just guessing this how it's gonna work.
So if you have come for the forum, if you can please make sure you sign in to the visitor sheet. Gloria, is it a new one or the same one? Okay. It's on the table back there.
Did Glory bring sleeping bags for us?
I know, we're gonna be here until Wednesday. I'm staying here until I get on my plane.
On your plane? Where are you going?
Leaving Wednesday, that's why I can't be here on the 20th.
Mark, what time? 5:30. We will start at 5:30?
So where are you going?
Pancake supper.
Colorado.
Oh.
Who runs this thing?
Hmm?
So we're just hoping it at the firehouse. Joanne? Or who runs this? I'm not sure if it's.
Can I have some technical assistance, Jay, please?
It's probably just
It took a while for it to warm up.
I was gonna say, it takes a minute.
Good evening. My name is Tom Borchert. As most of you know, I'm the Waltham representative to the board, and I'm the chair of the facilities committee for ANWSD. So we just wanted to have a conversation, the opportunity for people to ask about the project that we are proposing that we've warned for March 6th. To engage in capital repairs, energy conservation, and upgrade to the security and safety measures in the school. So we're basically proposing a plan to improve energy use of the schools in the district, including new heating systems, particularly at the high school, energy conservation in the district, and upgrades to the school security and the safety in all 4 schools in the district. This is going to be funded through, God willing, a $7.6 million bond that will pass, we hope, on March 6th. And the work's going to be conducted this summer in 2018. So the whole point is improved in efficiencies in energy use throughout the district, that would result in both improved learning conditions and comfort for both teachers and students, as well as guaranteed energy savings of more than $200,000 annually. So why are we doing this, really, is what's going on. There are a couple different things that are in play here. There is as most of you know, the high school in particular has a fragile HVAC system, which is incredibly inefficient, and it produces parts of the school that are both really warm and really cold. And over the last couple of years, we've had several incidents of lost school time. In particular, there was and it doesn't show up real well here, for which I apologize, but there was a steam leak 4 years ago, which destroyed a classroom. A couple weeks ago, there was a valve that broke one of the sprinklers in the back vestibule, which produced a leak which destroyed or significantly damaged the high school gym, which is related to this. And so basically the high school is running on borrowed time. So to talk about the challenges of keeping the schools running, I invite Ken to speak. This is Ken Sullivan, Director of Building, Grounds, and Safety.
Hi,
Ken.
So we'll start off with challenges. Keeping the high school functioning. 1958 steam pipes is what we have. They're 60 years old. There's thousands of feet of them. And that is probably the biggest challenge for the operations and maintenance, because these pipes are carrying or distributing the heat through steam to each individual space. And what happens over time, as they sit in the summertime, for example, they corrode on the inside, they rust. Sludgy material builds up. As the winter starts up, or the fall starts up, the cold starts, the steam starts. The steam will push through these pipes. And over the years, they've been altered to be more efficient. So the science behind steam, the engineering, there is steam savers and steam traps. These are devices that will provide a back pressure on the steam and allow the steam to do its work in the space. And then the condensate that's created is supposed to drain back by gravity to the boiler. So imagine the steam starts at that end, goes all the way to that end, all the way to the other end of the building, and then has to drain back in a pipe all the way back to the boiler room in the form of condensate. That's a challenge because these pipes are corroded on the inside. The pipe on the right is actually not an example of the steam side, so let's not confuse that. But on the left, you can see there's a coil that has been split or ruptured. That is the result of steam condensate not being able to drain back on the roof during the winter. And the reason why it couldn't drain back is because this stubborn little sludge ended up in this orifice, and it was unable to drain back, so the condensate builds up inside of that coil. And when nobody's there at 1 o'clock in the morning, it freezes, bursts, and you have a steam leak on the roof and a ruptured coil that typically run around $2,000 to $3,000 to replace every time that happens. There's 15 or better of them on the roof, and there's several of them, numerous, that are ruptured, and we're challenged at whether we replace those or not. Right now there's some redundancy, and that's why we're heating without some of these coils. but it's really difficult to control, as you can imagine, because we're just trying to utilize portions of the system to heat, and we're not using the full capacity of what we should be able to, so it's inefficient in that way right there. That's probably one of the biggest challenges, to control the heat in the building. But along with that, there's bad zone valves. I'm going to throw some technical words out here that people may understand from their own home. We have bad zone valves in each one of these rooms. There's a lot of rooms. There's thermostats. There's coils like you see up there. Steam savers that are clogging and causing this damage. And that is, not allowing that condensate to get back there where it should be, to be reboiled and produce more steam to go out. Now looking at the hot water side of this, because this school has a 60% steam and 40% hot water. So the steam will actually indirectly heat the hot water side, and the hot water will then push through pipes just like it does in people's homes with a hot water system. So it's a hybrid system here. There's steam and hot water. That does complicate it as well, because there's more mechanical that can go wrong. We're using something old, and we're converting it to give us heat, to give us hot water. Now, the right-hand side is a pipe that's full of iron oxide. Iron oxide is what we've been dealing with here on the hot water side. So we're not talking about the steam anymore. We're moving over to the other problems of the 40% of the building. And that pipe right there is clogged like that, approximately 2.5 feet back into that pipe right there. So that's not just a little bit on the edge. That's a buildup in there, which has consequently prevented the flow of hot water through that zone, which happens to be in Carl Crawford's class. And Carl said to me, Ken, we haven't had heat in here for 2.5 years after we took the coat hanger to that there to get that out of there. But what's happening is it's corrosion inside that you can't see. And over the years, it's deteriorated the inside walls, piping walls, and you really can't see it. But we've identified leaks here where the steel has become so thin from this deterioration from within that it's created leaks. So it's actually, instead of being punctured from the outside, it's corroded from the inside through and created its own leak throughout the building. Now that's on the hot water side. So that is an antifreeze, which is dripping out of the system, which I think you all would know what a 5-gallon bucket is. Well, that's about $80 worth of antifreeze. This school has well over 1,000 gallons of it. When you have a leak and you lose 30, 40, 50 gallons of it, you're looking at just the antifreeze cost alone can be upwards of $500,000, $800,000, not to mention the company that has to come in and charge us, $90 to $100 an hour to facilitate the repairs. So all of this said, what we're talking about is going to reset this piping and this older system and get rid of these corroded pipes that have been deteriorated, completely changing out this piping. On the steam side. On the hot water side, we'll be changing out the main piping, which are steel and have had most of the corrosion. So there is copper piping that it branches off from that, and that has not taken the same wear and tear as the steel, just due to the science behind it, which is the pH in the water. It has deteriorated the steel, and it hasn't attacked the yellow metals at this point, but will or can if it's not monitored. That pretty much sums up the high school. Elementary schools, some of the big things in the elementary schools are air handlers. The Virgins Elementary School usually cannot run the air handler due to noise, the noise factor that it presents. So they leave it off. So they don't ventilate when they have games, musicals, any kind of event in there. And that does make it uncomfortable for parents going to see things. I've been there before, it was pretty stuffy. There's just no air flow at all because it's not running. The Ferrisburg School is in a similar situation, except they don't have an air handler at all. And they use that room just like the elementary school for cafeteria and for sports and for phys ed and that kind of stuff. So we'll be adding an air handling system to bring in fresh air to there. Every elementary school and every school will be getting lighting and some aspect of security. The lighting is a big factor. The lights, for example, in here, every light would become an LED light and would be dimmable. I know that since I've been here and learned a little bit about what the teachers go through and certain students with certain conditions, that light tends to be an issue for quite a few people that you wouldn't normally think. And a lot of the rooms in the buildings are over bright, you might say. And it affects people's eyes, heads, headaches, all kinds of different conditions that I really never knew about. But this is something that I'm learning. And this particular lighting conversion would provide dimmers and dimmer switches in each room and each lighting zone so that teachers could actually do what they wanted with their lighting, which is going to really provide a big change for students and staff from that point.
This room is a pretty good example.
Yeah.
Look how many lights we have on the right-hand side. Look at the left-hand side.
Right.
For the identical functions.
Yeah.
Maybe potentially a little overlit.
Oh, it is, and this is a good example, actually.
Yeah.
We'll be able to adjust that by the staff can adjust that, the teachers. And if they have students that are sensitive to it, that's something that they'll do. So does anybody have any questions that they'd like to?
So, perfect. So one of the things that I think we have here is we have all 4 schools have challenges, though particularly at the high school. So I wanted to take a minute or two to talk about why we're doing this now and the particular context for which this is taking place. And it starts in a sense with the bond that was done in 2013, which was not initially successful, and the high school board at the time kind of stepped back and decided that they needed to change the culture of the way that the high school dealt with its facilities. And so I'm cribbing here from people who are on that board, but there were basically 4 points that they pointed to. One, excuse me, was the need for a simpler, straightforward bond that would deal with the immediate problems of the roof that needed to be dealt with at the time. 2, there was a desire to not bond out for things and pay for things for 20 years that would be done and dead within about 5, and so there was a shift to increase the amount of money that was going to the annual budget to pay for maintenance. 3rd was the establishment of a capital projects fund, which was done at the high school in order to deal with projects that were not huge but also not easily dealt with in an annual budget. And the 4th was to look towards the future to when what next big projects were going to need to be dealt with, and when the capital money would open up because of bonds that might be retiring. And so there was a bond that was passed in 2021, which dealt with a variety of things, and that's retiring in a couple years. And so 2001, what did I say? 2021, thank you. It's retiring in 2021. So it was in that context that we started to have the conversation on the high school facilities committee about what needed to be done for the high school in these larger projects. We started the process of putting together a request for proposals for a performance energy contract, which would address the ways in which the high school used energy and used the savings that would be produced from upgrades, energy efficiency upgrades, to help pay for the bond. That was in 2016 that we started. Well, we started that in 2015, but we were moving forward in 2016, and we decided to slow the process down and include all of the entire district, which was not yet a unified district. And so in late 2016, early 2017, we put out a request for proposals for companies that do this work. And so we had a competitive bidding process. We got a couple proposals, and we chose Energy Efficiency Investments of New Hampshire. And so Mike Davey, who's of EEI, is going to be talking about what they found, some of which Ken has been talking about, and what they propose to do. So.
Again, Mike Davey. So we were brought on, and when you first pull up to this beautiful school that had a renovation in 2001, you think there might not be a big opportunity for efficiency. But one of the things that we found was, first of all, improvement in technology has made LED lighting to the point that it has an excellent payback, and that the heating system, as Ken mentioned, the steam system which is 60%, has a lot of problems. The hot water system, which is 40%, has a lot of problems, which means 100% of your system is having significant HVAC problems. How that situation arrived, basically when the 2001 project was done, the decision was made at the time to keep the steam system up and running and to improve that system. So that was a 1958 system, and the district, through that bond, did get an additional almost 20 years of life out of that system. However, now we're at a point where it doesn't look like going forward 20 more years continuing the steam system would be a sound investment. So we approached this working since February of last year, working almost on a monthly basis with the facilities committee, to figure out what was the best type of project to bring forward. At first, we looked at perhaps just an energy efficiency project. So as everyone knows, natural gas is coming to Virgins. LED lighting has good technology. There's some insulation opportunities. So we looked at perhaps an energy efficiency only project that wouldn't deal with the infrastructure needs here at the high school or the code violations at several of the other schools. Then we also noticed that the security at this school doesn't really meet up to the current standards and recommendations. So there was another independent security audit that was done almost simultaneously of the school. And as a committee, I think they came to the decision that just putting energy efficiency and converting to gas alone doesn't really serve the best interests of these buildings going forward, looking at the long term, and that it was better to combine the energy efficiency with needed infrastructure upgrades. Basically, we found massive overheating problems at the high school. Why is this? A lot of times you have a control system that's outdated and failed steam coils. So we did a detailed survey of the ventilation units, and we found 40% of your ventilation units over a 1-year period didn't run a single day. And then another portion of them ran 24/7, and that was the system. That was essentially the facility manager, the previous one, it was trying to make the functioning equipment overcompensate for the broken equipment, which means you unfortunately overheated some rooms, to try and put some heat down the hall. The controls are outdated, and at Virgin's at the elementary school, they're actually pneumatic controls. So you're using compressed air, which is it was top of the line 1950s technology to open and control valves, but that system is really in desperate need of replacement. Many cracked steam coils, underventilating at the high school. One of the things we did is we brought the state fire marshal's office through. We said, listen, there's a potential for a large project. What code updates might that trigger, and what things could we do from a fire safety standpoint that we should keep in mind? So as part of this, we also have fire alarm panel upgrades at several of the schools, as well as a sprinkler system at Virgin's Elementary, and the kitchen hood. So commercial kitchens, by code, are required to have an exhaust system and an ANSL system, which would stop a grease fire. Several of the kitchens in the district have no fire suppression over the hoods. So those are things that don't save energy, but really make sense to do in conjunction with the other things in the project. This is an example. So the green line, if you can read it, is the temperature in a classroom, which is fluctuating between 76 and 78 degrees, I believe. Is that right? And the orange line is what we would like the system to do. So we'd like it to be at 70 during the day and then drop down to 60 at night. But as you can see, this is over, I believe it's a 2-week period. Every single day, it never once gets below 72 to 74 degrees. Those types of problems are fairly consistent in this building as well as in some of the elementary schools, which means we're wasting a lot of energy and overheating spaces. And guess what we're doing to deal with that overheating? We're opening windows. So it's very common to come by on a 10-degree day and see open windows. It's not because they're crazy in there, it's because we're overheating the spaces. To deal with that, we have in all the ventilation units that throughout the district, we'll put in demand control. So we'll actually modulate the amount of outside air based on the amount of people in the space. The library is a good example. You may come in here and there's 20 people, or you may come in here and there is 40 to 100 people, depending on. I thought maybe this talk would bring more people in, but I think, well, we got 2 anyway. So that right now, that ventilation is just bringing in as if there's 100 people all the time. It's always bringing enough air to satisfy 100 people, unless it's broken and off, which may actually be the case. So we'll put in demand control ventilation, which will actually measure the amount of people breathing in the space and only bring in enough air to satisfy those needs. We're also going to remove the steam heating system and go to a hydronic high efficiency system. All the rooftop units right now the majority of the rooftop units are steam. Steam on the roof is at risk of freezing if anything goes wrong, meaning if there's condensation in the coils or if a valve fails or a damper stays open. So because we're bringing gas, we're proposing to put gas rooftop units on so that we're never going to have freeze-ups that flood gym floors again or things like that. We are looking for putting in high-efficiency condensing boilers at the high school and at VES, and natural gas conversions for Virginia schools. We also looked at solar. The board had a commitment to renewable energy, and the payback for the solar panels on this roof fit within the payback time of the bond. So we thought it was a good opportunity to include solar, and in conjunction with the LED lights, will reduce power consumption by more than 50% at this building. The LED lighting will be dimmable. We'll have integral motion sensors, so if as daylight comes in through the windows, the lights will automatically dim. That's throughout the district. We are only putting solar panels on sections of the roof that have been done in the last 3 years. So we're not going to be in a situation where we put panels on and then you're going to have to take them off when you re-roof. So And the estimated life of the LED products is more than 20 years, and the solar panels, I believe, is 25 lifespan.
So this is a pretty big project, and it's, you know, as we're going out to bond for, we're requesting the voters to approve a bond of $7.6 million. One of the really awesome things about it is essentially budget neutral. And the reason for that is twofold. One is that we're retiring a bond in 2021 that we pay about $400,000 a year for. This will be about $600,000 a year for the next 20 years. So we also get $200,000, more than $200,000 in energy savings from our current budget. So that $200,000 plus that $400,000 equals the $600,000 that we're going to be paying over the next 20 or so years for this. So as I said, this is essentially a budget neutral project. Making the lives of our children and our teachers much happier. A lot of this information that we've been sharing tonight is on the website of the ANWSD of the district. There you can see here there's some frequently asked questions, information about the audit that EEI has done, as well as a short video about the project, which has, again, a lot of this same information. So this is basically, it seems to us, a fairly straightforward issue. It's a set of projects that need to be done. It'll improve the efficiencies of the school. It'll improve the energy usage and the sustainability of the schools in the district. And we hope that everyone votes for it on March 6th. So if you have any questions for me, Ken, Mike, Joanne, shoot. Go ahead. Sir. Oh, sorry. If you could identify yourself, your town.
I wanted to thank Ken and George came to the Harrisburg Select Board and gave an overview of the bond project. And it's good to come tonight because I do have a couple of questions about knowing historically heating, ventilating systems in large buildings like schools can not work well. And to understand that there's some equipment here and some of the infrastructure, it's just old, it's just plain old. And the upgrades that you described sound really good, and hopefully new technology that will last a long time. I'm wondering if the heating and ventilating upgrades would include to some degree some ability to not only heat but also to control temperature and offer some cooling. It seems like there are times of the year in schools when it can be unbearably hot. And I'm not certain if any of the redesign would perhaps allow for just some better temperature control outside of the winter months.
So one of the things that we looked at is Virgins Elementary specifically has a wing of the school which is essentially used almost 50 weeks a year. And that's a zone that has no cooling now, that we said this gets used year round, let's put in air conditioning. And then, so that specifically, and then the office areas and anywhere that currently has, you know, we call them window shakers, but the window ACs, those are going to be replaced with high efficiency variable speed, variable refrigerant systems. And then we're going to have better controllability of the ventilation in the classrooms, meaning we'll have essentially economizer mode where we'll be able to bring in outside air, but we're not adding cooling to the classrooms as part of this.
Maybe Jeff can help with this, Glassberg, but we went back to high school, found some security stuff a couple years ago, and we are currently in a lease, if I remember right, with Marshall Fire, maybe we need Elizabeth. Yeah, Marshall Fire, we used to pay like 16 a year or something like that.
I believe so.
Yeah, I know. So how does this affect that? Does that go away?
That is a very good question.
Okay.
And if it's leased, we would continue with the lease. But I don't know I cannot report tonight on the status of that.
Okay. I just wondered, because I know we're doing safety or security stuff with this.
If I can jump into that.
Mm-hmm.
What we're leasing from them is the fire alarm system that we have here.
Okay.
And we aren't actually dealing in the fire alarm system in this building, to the best of my understanding.
Okay.
We're dealing in fire in Ferrisburg Elementary for the kitchen hood, and in Virginia's Elementary for the kitchen hood and the sprinkler system.
Okay.
But I don't think there's anything that's going to impact the fire alarm system in this building.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah? All right. Thank you, George. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your energy. Oh,
I watched the video and it helps a lot to understand are we getting it out there to the public that here's a video to help understand about the bond, and we went to the Ferrisburg Select Board, but are we getting out?
We're going to select boards, we're going to the meetings that we can talk to. It's posted on Front Porch Forum. Twice so far.
The link is on the brochure.
The link is on the brochure, it's on the website. I will be writing a letter to the Addison Independent for closer to to submit, ask them to publish closer to the vote. And it's gone out to, it's on the school newsletters as well.
So, but the issue is that the link is to the district website and not directly to the video, and I think people would more quickly click on a video than they necessarily would go to the district website and then find the video. And I agree with Nancy, the video is fabulous. Really gives a lot of information.
But put up you had a slide that's the district website and shows.
Right, but you have to go to that website.
Yeah, it,
Post-reference, everything was on there.
yeah, but the video is right there on the front.
Right, but if you just had the video on Front Porch Forum, the Vimeo link.
What about on
Which one is it?
It would get, I think it would get, you get a lot of bang for your buck.
What about on the Facebook page? Is that
We did not put it on Facebook, but we could do that.
When's the brochure mailing?
The check went to him on Friday, so it should be out this week sometime.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Christina. You guys did a heck of a lot of work. Oh, and thank you, George.
Turn this off.
Well, it's on RETN.
That's right.
Yes, it is.
That's right. Okay, so we can
You know,
reconvene to restart back up? I don't know. Do you want to make a
It
motion?
just, the recess is over.
I think our recess has ended and we reconvene now.
Yeah.
I think we just start. And I'm up. I don't have anything to say other than what I wrote, so unless you guys have questions on what I wrote there. All right. Committees. Community engagement.
Okay, so you all had a retreat, another meeting with Sue McCormick that I was not at. I have the minutes here, but I didn't know if you wanted to report on that.
I didn't bring any notes, so.
Okay. So the goal of that meeting was to create a community engagement proposal that we want to present to the board in March. And that included creating a timeline. And I have met twice with Beth, and we've basically taken everything from the last 3 workshops with Sue McCormick, and that will be going into the proposal. And so that will be in our next mailing to the board for people to see, and I will. We're having a meeting on the 27th to finalize that with the committee.
Okay, so, for this board meeting, Joanne, the administration, and the policy committee agreed that we would get started on setting up a system of review for the required ANWSD procedures and reports. So Joanne sent a response that you all read, and then I took another shot at it early today, and so I'm going to bring my work. I shared my work back to the committee and to Joanne, and I think this is where what we'll do is we'll review it again together, because we have to meet this month before the March board meeting, because we have 10 policies that we need to review again to keep on track. So here's the tally. There are 31 policies that require procedures, okay? And they all have to be new, essentially, whether we have them or not, because they're all new policies. So 10 right now are created and revised and have been reviewed by me, and I think they're clean, and I'll share that with the committee. 9 have been created and revised, but they didn't go through in the email, so I couldn't look at them. But we will, okay? But they were supposed to be sent, so we'll get it done. So that's 2/3 essentially. 11 are in process and not yet available, and 1 I reviewed, but we thought that it was going to be okay, but it didn't. It's because it actually C21 references ANWSU policies, so I sent that along. So I don't know. We've got until June to get this right, so we're in a good spot, I think, with basically having about 20 reviewed. Out of the 32. So in terms of the reports, there are 16 required reports. 5 have been created according to ANWSD policy and have been made available to the board. 2 are in process and they have future dates. And 7 are in process, but they don't have future dates. So that's our first systematic review of our policies, procedures, and reports. I'll talk about this with the committee, and we need to figure out a way that we're not sending all of these things on email, that they're available for board members to get to, and so that's part of the review that we're doing. So it kind of answers your question. Honestly, I just don't know yet, but
Well, maybe just in a folder, like you have the policies in a folder on Drive.
Yeah.
If it was just there, so if someone
Yeah.
wanted to go and look,
Yeah.
just like I have all the community
Yeah.
engagement stuff is in a folder that everyone
Yeah, it sounds
can
good.
access, that would be super.
Yeah, something like that. We'll try to figure out what we need to do. So, all right, we'll meet again sometime.
I have a quick question about the chart that Joanne filled out. There were a number on there where it said completed, but it didn't say yes. As in, it fulfilled the policy or didn't fulfill the policy?
We haven't reviewed them like that. I went through and I've sent it back to you, the next one.
Yeah.
And I said yes to some of them, but you all as a group did
We
not
need to say
yes.
yes. Got it.
Yes.
So at some point, the committee will then bring that back to the full board for,
We have another one scheduled, the April board meeting is another time where we have put on the calendar that we would report out, that this policy subcommittee would report out again. And then, of course, we have until June to get it right.
cool. Thank you. Facilities? Tom, do you have anything?
I got nothing.
Additional? Thank you. Yeah,
We're not meeting in March.
okay. I think you guys
Because
can.
we're going to be out canvassing the voters to
Yeah.
get them to vote on.
Can lay
on
low
March.
for.
Hey, no, it's okay. I have an election or a voting question, but
Now's the time.
It doesn't have to pass in each town. It just has to be a majority. As with the budget, it's just a majority of the voters in the 5 towns.
Finance committee?
And just, it is going on Australian ballot, it's not from the
Mhm.
floor.
That's
That's
right.
correct.
The-
It all goes, it'll still be voting on that day. In pen.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
paper ballots,
Paper ballot,
not
okay.
from the
Thank
floor
you.
of the meeting,
Yep,
no.
yep, yes.
Still, all of it's supposed to be on the ballot.
Yes.
The problems that we have, though, are that at least 2 of the meetings are not on town meeting day. So where it used to be, people go to town meeting and vote, and then the other people, some of them would come in and vote. Now we have at least Ferrisburgh and Virgins that the meeting is not on town meeting day. So people that go to town meeting can't vote on these things.
Canton's the only one that's on town meeting, the
Well-
only town meeting that's on town meeting
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, they
During
can
the day.
vote,
During
just
the
not
day.
The
at the same
old-fashioned
time.
way.
isn't
They
it?
can't go to the meeting and vote. They have to
Right.
go a separate time.
Right.
But
Well, it's
You gotta
even-
make
yeah,
sure that
right.
people,
But the good point about that, the positive point about that is that you can talk about the vote.
You're
at
right.
the-
You're right.
At the
Well,
town
in
meetings.
Virgins at least, you can go to the city clerk right now and vote. The ballots are there.
And any of
I know,
them.
so I mean, it's there. If you want to be absentee, call up your clerk and it'll be
Yeah,
sent
you
to
can be
you. It will be
absentee.
delivered to
That's
you.
true.
Justice of the Peace will bring you your ballot on the day of if you can't make it out. You can drive up to your polling place and ask for somebody to bring a ballot out to you if you can't get out of the car. So, and I hear things about, well, I couldn't make it to vote.
yeah, not
That is
really.
very good information, thank you.
Maybe that should be on Front Porch Forum.
It is.
Cool. Okay, so,
It was already on Front Porch Forum, and it will be again.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee. So, I haven't been on top of it. And I wanted everybody to know this because I'm feeling not very good about it. I've had a rough year, and my intention was to create Finance Committee policies so that everyone would know what they're doing when they're reviewing bills. And I haven't finished it. And I hope to, but I thought you guys should all know that. And I reviewed the bills this month, and there were some things I talked to Elizabeth about. There's some other things that I'm going to talk to her about. So everybody knows we're getting a new sign. Does anybody know anything about this besides me? Yes, so that's how I knew that there were student accounts going through because there was an $11,000 payment with an additional $25,000 afterwards. But I hadn't heard anything about it, so I just wanted to make sure now everybody knows. And is it a sign that's going out there, or is it the sign?
They had a site visit in the fall, and several people went, including myself. All these people met out there without sign.
And it's gonna be one of those,
About the sign.
I don't know if the board knew about it, it was done through boosters and the parent group.
Yeah, right, it's all funded, yeah.
That's something
Does it-
that should come to the board for approval.
Well, we just learned that tonight, yes.
I mean,
what to spend in,
You
from
can't
that
just put a
account.
new sign up out there, I don't care if you pay for it yourself, without this group saying it's okay.
I don't know what-
So maybe that ought to be a subject of
we
discussion
don't-
under action items.
We don't directly manage the grounds, though,
Uh,
so, I don't know.
I'm a sign on school property, I think that's under our purview. I understand that, I understand that. It's gonna be a different sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a bit different.
And is this one of those things that,
It's digital.
yeah, I hate those signs, God.
There,
I'm
see?
sorry, I do, I
There's
just
a-
hate them, I think they're ugly, I hate them.
There's a vote against it right there, so
But
see, it
there is
isn't
no
a
vote.
unanimous thing.
We have no vote. So anyway, the Finance Committee has met every month, and we've been doing all right, and I'm just gonna keep going.
Were there any other the issues that you talked to Elizabeth about that the rest of us should be aware of, or no?
I think this is something everybody knows, but we need to get on top of the contract issues with payroll. And because there are people that we're paying, but there is no way for me to tell what that person is doing. Because there's no documentation, like there's no job description, there's no contract. So,
We're paying people who don't have a contract. Is that what you're saying?
Coaches, I'll bet you, and referees and things of that
there
nature.
was, right, these are not, okay, so I asked to see the contract for a particular employee, and what I got was a work agreement that basically just said, you're gonna get paid 16 whatever, and that's it. No other verbiage that tells that person what they're supposed to do. I know, they've talked to you, of course they have, right? They've talked to you, I mean, but this stuff should be written.
So, I would like to look into that and be able to report more articulately to the board, but the notion of a work agreement is a recommendation by our attorney, because a contract is more binding.
Okay.
A work agreement is not.
Okay, so I know with employees that contracts, but with an actual contractor, that wouldn't be going through payroll, but with an actual contractor, we should have those.
The actual contractor, in many cases, has a two-page
Of their
work
own- of
agreement,
contract.
because I want to define what the deliverables are.
Right.
Is a work agreement the same as a memorandum of understanding? Is that, no, different?
I don't use the terminology memorandum of understanding. I use work agreement or professional contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
My concern is only that we're paying for, we're getting what we're paying for. And I couldn't tell what we were getting from the documentation that was available to me.
I think based on what we heard from Bill tonight, there's a larger discussion that has to happen in terms of approval, stipends.
Right.
When people get paid, what should the process be?
Yeah.
So I think this needs a little bit more conversation, and I'd like
I
to
think, yeah.
connect with Elizabeth more specifically on your questions, Laura.
Yeah, and you know, everybody should know that I think this is probably the first time in history payroll has been reviewed
That's right.
by the board, any of the boards. So, I mean, we're doing something good. We're heading in the right direction. We're finding things. The auditors are finding things. This is, and, you know, Elizabeth's here, and I'm thrilled with that. So, that's it.
Thank you. Hannaford, do you have more to add to what we heard tonight?
Just a couple little things. So their board meeting is this coming Wednesday, as well as their annual meeting. And their Maker Fair is Thursday, February 15th, from 4 to 7. And since, unfortunately, I'm unable to attend because I have a work event at UVM all day on the 15th. So if anyone here would like to go represent us at the Maker Fair. And I also have a conflict with the next board meeting in March, that I will not be able to attend that board meeting. So if anybody wanted to go in my stead, just let me know. So I feel a little bad missing their board meetings. And I had to miss the February one because we had a budget meeting, the January one. So, you know, but other than that, I don't, you heard Dana tonight, so.
One of the things about the guidance that I was wondering about is Maker Fair and the open house is happening after the people are supposed to be turning in their course requests.
Yeah.
And it might make sense to have it after, so if students wanted to go to the open house to understand what's going on at the Career Center,
I believe all the students went to.
Oh, you're right, they did go down there.
Earlier in the year.
Well, the
yeah.
10th grade went
Yeah.
down in
Yeah.
December, maybe?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. There was a snow issue that some of the schools missed, and then they made them up. But, you know, I have to say, I wonder, can they open the Hannaford Career Center up to students at a younger age? There's lots of questions about how to get more kids there, but.
But also the presentation
Looks like there's some really great things going on there.
Yeah, they're working pretty hard.
Christine, I have a question about the cost per student, the $21,000. How does that compare with the rest of the state in their technical centers? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that, but I
do
will
know
be.
the answer
You
to
do?
that.
You do?
It's actually the highest tuition in the state for a technical center.
Yeah.
And some of that size?
3 regional ones, Laurie.
Okay.
Set up like the way
I guess
that,
that's right.
yes,
Like-
there are
like we're
more.
set up, but everybody has the same calculation.
Correct.
All the time, okay.
So it'd be great if we could send more.
Yeah,
Get
boy.
Yeah.
more students down there.
Mm.
I do have their budget books at my office
If you want to see them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we're talking about the trades and Ken saying, you know, we don't have enough kids going into the trades.
Yeah.
What-
That local budget number of the 21,000, which was, what was it, 14 or, no, what was it? He had a local budget and then he had an amount that came from the state. That local budget, that's what we,
Yeah,
fund.
Around 14,000.
12 something.
The
Yeah.
12,899.
based on the number of our kids who attend.
Right.
We want to really promote that. I'll tell you that my son, I don't believe, would ever have gotten more than high school, but he ended up going down there his senior year and ended up going to college and getting an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree, and ended up with honors when he graduated with his bachelor's. And it was all because of the fact that he went down there and attended their, it was the drafting sort of thing. It was on the computer. And by taking that course, he got an automatic admission over in Randolph. And there's no way that he ever would have gotten into any college with what he had. But that gave him the.
Now that's on TV.
I'm sorry, it's true. It gave the incentive to him to go to college, and after he got in college, he studied and he excelled.
Right. It certainly fits in with the personalized learning targets that we're trying to do. To work towards.
When their new website launches, I get
Okay, cool.
at one of the board meetings, and it's pretty awesome. So it's definitely meant to attract students and families to.
So is the governor putting any restrictions on technical centers like he is on us?
No, right?
Not at the moment.
No, but we do have some emails that you could respond to the legislators with some
I
thoughts and
did.
ideas.
I did do that.
Send another thought.
But I didn't talk about the technical centers.
Right. Lori, do you have anything from the VSBA for us to know?
We have a meeting on Wednesday, and the VSBA is going to take some positions in the legislature. Anybody wants to know anything about that, they can contact me. I'll read it and let you know. I'm not prepared for that meeting yet, so.
Okay.
But I know they're going to take some positions.
Was that what they sent a couple emails? Is it
Yeah.
more in depth than that, or are those
I'm
the?
afraid I'm not.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We've
That's
got
okay.
4 emails sitting in my inbox
okay.
that I haven't read yet, because it always takes a while.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are pretty
It's a
lengthy,
lot.
yeah.
Information.
All right, wonderful. So we are on to action items, so looking for some motions.
I would move that we approve the minutes of January 10, 17, and 22, 2018.
Second?
Any discussion around those minutes, questions, changes?
It looked great.
Nice job, Glory. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes of those 3 meetings, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, bills and director's orders.
Elizabeth had the dollars.
So for payroll, the total amount is $843,393.23. Do them separately or?
We can do them together.
And your bills are $462,731.29.
Is that, warrant, does that have a voided check on the bottom? The 462,731.29? Like a handwritten voided check? No, huh? Wonder. Okay, so I'm hesitating because the one I looked at had a manual entry for a voided check that she, anyway,
How long ago?
Thursday, last.
So she's probably corrected it and it's in the printed version
It's
now.
possible, it's possible. All right, I'll make a motion to adopt the payroll in the amount of $843,393.23 and bills of directors' orders of $462,731.29.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor of accepting those amounts, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Authorize superintendent to offer contract for PE health at VUHS.
So in my incidental report, I'm recommending James Benoit for the one-year only position replacement of Ed Cook. James has a bachelor's degree from the University of Vermont with a major in exercise and movement. He has experience as a personal trainer, strength and conditioning, as well as a hockey and football coach.
So we need a motion?
Neither of which we
I so moved.
I think Tom moved.
Oh, second then.
Okay. Yes, Christina?
You said for 1 year, or is it from now until the end of this?
From now until the end of this school year.
So it's a semester.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. All in favor of approving that contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Appoint members to evaluation committee. Motion?
I move that we appoint members to an evaluation.
We have an evaluation committee.
Okay. So, yes, I did put the explanation in my write-up.
That's not here, though.
It is not here, and I have it here to read to you all. So we had an evaluation committee which figured out how we're going to go about doing the evaluation and did a full survey and evaluation back in October. The process that was laid out was that will be done again, the full survey and everything will be done again in the summertime. But at this time, we need to reconvene or reestablish an evaluation committee to solicit input from the board and to check in with Joanne regarding her goals and provide the feedback that's been solicited and to make a recommendation to the board at the March meeting regarding contract renewal so that Joanne can be notified by, I should say hopefully at the March meeting, so that Joanne can be notified regarding contract renewal by April 1st. That's what the contract says.
Wouldn't it be appropriate?
It's just the same group of
Well, that committee disbanded.
the evaluation
We,
committee, so.
Yeah,
we did actually. We established that committee for a certain purpose and they completed the purpose and disbanded, so.
But because they're already in the middle of it, wouldn't it be appropriate to
Well,
ask
if the
those
same
same
people
people
want to step up and do it again this time, that's perfectly fine. If other people would like to have an opportunity to join the committee at this point for, I would envision this is gonna probably be 2 meetings. One,
Before the March 12th meeting.
one before the March 12th meeting to figure out what the process will be. There may have to be a second one quickly, like right before the March meeting, to determine what will be presented at that meeting. And then there's going to be another meeting afterwards because there's a couple things with that process that was laid out with the committee last time that need a little bit of clarification that I think this time around the committee can provide a little clarification on.
So who was on it before?
I'm not sure that
I'll take the suspense away. I'll be willing to be on there.
Okay, so John, Diana, Christina,
And
Mark, and myself,
All right.
and Tom. All right.
You gotta be careful.
Permanent committee that just meets as needed, as opposed to we keep creating this
There
little
you
ad
go.
hoc where we have to recreate it.
So, Mark, I'm actually, I will address that point that you are reiterating.
You're getting close to a quorum there, you gotta be careful.
I will address that as well, thank you. That committee was established for a certain purpose. It automatically disbanded. We disbanded at our last meeting. But also, it was brought up that there are other board members that may want to have input and may want to be part of the committee. So this is an opportunity for other people to now have direct input as a committee member as well, rather than having the same people stay on it forever.
So we might at our reorganization meeting, I mean, the reason we had to bring this up right now for this meeting is because the committee needs to meet before the reorganization meeting, but at the reorganization meeting, we might call this
Match where we are.
I think that is one thing that this committee needs to determine. That's one of the fine details that was not fleshed out at the last convening of this committee. Sorry, I think I'm losing my voice. So that is,
we're only on hour.
that is 6 of us, which is not a quorum.
Is that too many?
But it does mean that we need at least 4 of us to be at the meeting, but we're talking about a couple meetings and we can, yeah, so I think that's fine.
But it means 3 of us can meet in public.
Okay, so.
Oh, you're
You're
getting sly.
So we need a motion to appoint those board members to the evaluation committee, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
They already have a motion on the floor.
Oh, we do, okay.
That's right,
Just to establish the committee, that's right.
that's right.
All right. So, John, would you like yours to be an amendment to indicate who will be on that committee?
Let's vote amending that the people who were named will be on there. It's Sue, Mark, Christina, myself, Diana, and Tom.
Okay.
Good.
Is there a second for that amendment?
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion, or can we vote on the amended motion? All right, all in favor of establishing that committee with those 6 members?
Wait,
please say-
hold the phone. You have to vote on the amendment, and if that passes, then you vote on
Oh,
the
you're right, it
original
was
motion.
seconded. Okay, sorry. Very good. All in favor of accepting that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, all in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, you guys are so good, okay. All right, that brings us to discussion item, annual meeting planning. I just wanted to say that I had talked to the treasurer, and he thinks that the stipend that was established last year is fair and is good, is, good Lord, I need to go to bed. I'm sorry. It's fair, and he feels that it would be a good amount to move forward, just wanted to put that out there. So, right now we have, I believe it's $3,000 for the treasurer. The board is $850 for the year, and the clerk is $150 for the year. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of those amounts moving into the meeting next month. I won't be there, but it will be wonderful. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 weeks from tonight, that's right. I'm not gonna be gone that long. If it was next month, I would be there. No. Does anyone else have any questions or any information?
In the annual report, I was reading the minutes from last one, and it didn't say $850, it said $1,500, and that was
Yep.
confusing to me.
Yes, because there were some questions that came up when the stipends, I think we did talk about this a month ago or so. There were some questions that came up when the checks were cut for our stipends, and Gloria went back to the video and watched it, and it actually, that information is not captured accurately in those minutes. So one of the actions that will need to happen at the annual meeting will be amending those minutes to represent.
I think it was 15.
No, that was a motion that was made at one point, but that's not what ended up passing, so.
Wasn't there something we forgot to do at the annual meeting last year? You might just.
The budget meeting.
The budget meeting.
Okay, is that what it was? Okay.
We will have a budget meeting after the annual meeting this year at
wanna make sure.
7. Yeah.
That's one of those meetings that's for the public that they never attend.
The annual meeting is a meeting of the public.
Yeah.
Actually, and so I will send out my ideas on edits for those minutes for you guys all to look at beforehand. You can watch the Retton video and see if you agree with them before you propose them. Right. I've watched it a few times now.
It was tricky.
It's fun. When I do that, there is a link also on the VSBA website of information about the annual meeting that I will send you guys as well in case there's more questions about how that operates. But it is a meeting of the public, right?
Do we have a moderator?
I believe
Yes.
Tom is on board. Yep.
Tom Spencer?
Yeah.
And then I'll run the budget.
Tom will be in charge.
Oh, yeah?
Moderating. Moderating.
And who is presenting the budget presentation?
Well, I just sent an email to Tom to see if we could have a meeting to have that conversation.
I thought John was gonna do it.
Is John gonna do it?
John has
I
off.
don't have anything to present just yet except for the.
Yeah, we've been talking.
Great.
But, yeah.
All right. Let me know what you need.
There needs to be some more discussion, but
Well, let's just get this, let's talk about this. There are some required things that the board must present. And they're listed somewhere.
yes.
Where's that list?
I
It's in
have
policy?
I
It's in
have it in
policy?
an email. I'll send it to you.
And that will be the presentation.
Yeah.
If we can, I'll send a note about that.
And no rah-rah, no.
Is that what we're referring to?
Yes.
Whose requirements are they? I was just wondering.
There's
Yeah.
it's
I mean, I just wanna
statute
make
and
sure we do
policy.
what we're exactly what we're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's definitely conveying to the public that we think this is a wise choice, definitely.
So there is a rah-rah coming.
Right, and all of the
Wisdom.
questions. Right. So does that make sense? All right. I think we do not need to adjourn to the public forum because we already did that. So we're just looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much for sticking it out.
Thanks for here for that.
Well, you have a good time on your vacation.
On our first
We'll watch you.
presentation.
No, you won't.
Good, thank you very much.